Hello guys, welcome to the fiction series. Today we are gonna see, what if Naruto got harem with Black Canary, Starfire and Miss Martian. Huge shout out to Nami KAAZAE09 for this story. If you want more awesome fan fiction like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, so without wasting any time let's get into the video. Naruto's POV. Funny thing about death, they say when you die, the first thing you see is a bright light and then darkness, and whoever said that was telling the truth, but the only difference about me is that I didn't die per se, I was simply too stubborn to die, and there is a reason for that. To make a long story short, my dad, so-called dead yet still alive, student Obito Uchiha, or Toby as he calls himself, and his master Madara, declared war on the shinobi nations in order to revive a demon of great destruction, and I don't mean Kurama, because this monster made his attack on the village look like a child's temper tantrum. Anyways, the reason for the whole death experience ordeal. Using my affinity for Fuinjutsu, I created one that not only permanently sealed the Jubi away, but also one that sent that senile old relic Madara's soul to the afterlife, where I know the Shinigami was dying to get his hands on the bastard soul. With him gone, me and my girlfriend Satsuki Uchiha had one final confrontation with a nut job, and we kicked his ass, but being the sore loser he was, Obito had one final ace up his sleeve. He had marked his whole body with suicide seals that had enough power to destroy an entire island, and the last thing I remember is me using a powerful barrier technique I learned from my mother's scrolls to protect myself and Satsuki-chan, a great explosion, and my chakra mixed with Kurama's, and then nothing. The next thing I know, I'm waking up floating in a tube with multiple tubes attached to me and monitors taking in my heartbeat, but that wasn't the part that freaked me out, it was the fact that nearly half of my body was missing, like my left leg, right arm, left eye. And several of my internal organs were, for better terms, funked up, but luckily for me and Satsuki-chan, I was saved by a guy named Anthony Ivo, who gave me a replacement body to replace the parts of me I've lost to that deranged asshole Obito. I hope he and Madara are rotting for all eternity in the 9th level of hell, but the loss was worth it for my Harem, because I already lost one of them to the bastard. But the gain from my new body did increase my natural abilities, such as my speed, strength, senses, etc. I won't go into full detail, but the abilities I gained with my enhancements made me feel like I could take on an army of Kage-level ninja and have enough energy left to beat the ego out of Madara. After saving my life, I thanked the old man and swore to repay him back in any way I can, because that's the kind of guy I am, as I always repay my debts, especially if that person saved me from being crippled for life. He didn't ask for much back, just to help him against some goons that are after his brain and his life and nothing more. Now you're all wondering how in the hell I survived. It was thanks to my first friend Kurama, a giant 9-tailed fox who was the closest thing I had to family since the day I could walk and talk. At the cost of his life, he saved me and Satsuki from impending death, and the backlash resulted in us being found by Ivo. I'm gonna miss the guy, but with his sacrifice, he left me a large portion of his power which fused with mine, and knowing him, he'd tell me not to go glum over losing him, or else he'd leave the afterlife and kick my ass for being an emo. Now that the explanation is done with, let's get on with the story of my new life and the sweet adventures me and Satsuki-chan will partake in. Los Angeles, California. Ivo Tech Enterprises. Two security guards were patrolling the dimly lit hallways of the top floor in the corporation building, looking around for anything suspicious. After checking the place again, they head to the elevator to check the next floor. From the darkness, several black-clad figures snuck through the darkness, avoiding the security cameras and heading to a door with a sign that said CEO office, and noticed the lights in the room were still on. One of the shadows reaches for the doorknob and pushes it open, with the others rushing into the large office, but stop when they see someone who was not Ivo leaned back in the chair, with his feet crisscrossed and resting on the desk. From his appearance, he seemed to be in his late teens to early 20s, with spiky golden blonde hair that stopped to his shoulders with jaw-length bangs. He was garbed in a sleek black suit with matching pants and a pair of black dress shoes, along with a red long-sleeved dress shirt with a black tie with a pair of shades with crimson lenses and gold-colored frames, picture Alucard shades from Hellsing. Resting against the edge of the desk was a sheathed high-tech HF blade that appeared to be in the Okatana-classed swords. The high-tech scabbard was black with silver tip at the end, while the sword had a dark grey round guard with the hilt being black, with a what appeared to be a red switch near the guard, and connected to the hilt with a white cap at the end of the hilt, Jetstream Sam's Muramasa. Katana. He stared at them for a few seconds before a smile rose on his face. I take it you guys are here for Ivo, correct? Naruto questioned, but got no answer from the group and chuckles before placing his hands around the scabbard of his sword and slowly getting up to his full height. Unfortunately, he's out of town, but I'll be more than happy to leave a message. The black-clad men each responded by drawing their katana from their backs, which made Naruto's smile grow. Oh, so it's that kind of message? Okay, then here's my response. He slowly drew his weapon, revealing a crimson blade that glowed under the moonlight. For those who can guess where I got the idea for the blade gets a cyber cookie lol. So who's first? The next day. Anthony, Ivo and Satsuki Uchiha had made it back from the business meeting he had with a friend from a star lab. Like Naruto, Satsuki appeared to be in her late teens to early 20s, looking like a teenage version of her late mother Makoto Uchiha, having a fair-skinned complexion and a slender yet toned build for a female her age. Her hair was black with hints of blue around the bangs that formed on both sides of her face, with her hair tied into a high ponytail and stopping to the middle of her back with onyx-colored eyes that shined in the light. She was garbed in a business outfit with a dark blue jacket and matching skirt that stopped above her knees and left little to hide in terms of her nicely shaped legs, and her firm rear with a pair of black high heels on her feet, and under the jacket was a black dress shirt that was unbuttoned from the top, showing a little cleavage from her D-cupped breasts. As soon as they took the elevator to the first floor and headed to his personal office, they both paused when they saw the door was littered across the floor, looking like firewood. They also noticed the body of the shadow assassin who had a perfectly round circular hole around the area where his heart once was, sprawled against the floor with dried blood around. Good heavens. Ivo muttered. Satsuki narrowed her eyes as she glanced at the office and was the first to enter the office, only to see it in shambles, and like the other body, 6 others littered the ground with a few missing limbs or with wide fatal slashes going across their bodies. As she looked around, her gaze stopped at the blonde who was sitting in the middle of the carnage in Ivo's comfy chair, whistling in a nonchalant fashion while polishing Kushinada, heart of the whirlpool, with a white cloth. The female Uchiha sweat dropped at her boyfriend and coughed to get his attention. "Oh hey Haim, hey Ivo, how was the trip?" he asked in a cheery tone. "It was good for better or worse," Ivo answered. "Care to explain what happened to my office?" Naruto looked around and shrugs. "Oh this? They were looking for you, but when I told them you weren't here and asked them to leave, they refused and well," he did a hand gesture at the scene before him and sheathes his blade. Ivo sighs and shakes his head in annoyance. "So now they send assassins out for my head, and right when I just got this office redecorated." He muttered, "Satsuki, be a dear and call a cleanup crew to take care of this mess." He pulls out a remote device with a blue button on it and presses it, resulting in the wall behind his desk to split and separate, revealing a hidden room that looked like an exact replication of his office. "Sure in Naruto, can't you go one day without causing collateral damage?" she questioned with a hint of humor in her voice as she approached him. Naruto responded by raising his hand in "it's not my fault" gesture. "This wasn't my fault, Satsuki-chan, I just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. It's not like I asked for trouble." He replied, only for her to chuckle and give him a peck on the cheek. "You bring trouble even when it's unintentionally, and speaking of which, I think we need to have a talk with our clients about harming those we care about." Naruto nodded in agreement with the Ravenet. "My thoughts exactly, I told them that Ivo was off limits, but it looks like I'll need to enforce my words into their brains." "How? At the point of your sword, lad?" Ivo questioned with a brow raised. Naruto stroked his chin and thought before smirking. "Nah, that would be too easy for, and besides that's Satsuki's way of threatening our clients," said Uchiha's brow twitched in annoyance and simply huffed. "Since it was true, I'll either double our fee, or I could accidentally sabotage any mission they give me." The blonde answered. "And speaking of missions, our so-called clients want to meet with us about our next one in a few hours." Unknown location. The 2 former Leaf Ninja were in a room surrounded by 7 different screens and light, with only bright images that represent the silhouettes of the 7 people. Naruto was garbed in what looked like a full black bodysuit with silver chrome armor around the chest, torso, legs, shins, arms, and shoulders, but instead of being large and bulky like most armor, it was more slim and streamlined. Showing off his athletic build that balanced out his speed and strength, and from the appearance was a martial artist, and he was garbed in a pair of black hamaka pants, like the one Sujiro Haiko wears from Rurouni Kenshin, with a belt that had a metallic fox head on it. And over his outfit, he wore a dark gray military long coat with red on the inside, with a variety of pockets with a hood over his head that shadowed the upper half of his face, showing the blonde bangs that framed the sides of his face, and his cerulean blue eyes. Picture the hoods worn by the assassins, form Assassin's Creed. Satsuki's outfit consisted of a black leather ninja outfit with long black gloves, black arm guards and shin guards, with the bodysuit showing her fit athletic frame off nicely. Around her waist was a utility belt of some sorts with a weapons pouch strapped to her hip, along with a chikudo that was strapped into the belt in a diagonal fashion, like Sasuke wore it in Shippuden, and around her neck was a long blue cape with a fan symbolizing her clan, and she wore a mask over the lower part of her face, like Kakashi does. "So are you two aware of the objectives given?" one of the images asked in monotone that carried a voice of authority, but not in a calm or arrogant manner. "Yeah, but before we do our objective, I have to ask why we're a small group of shadows sent after Ivo's life. Last I recalled we made an agreement that he would be off limits so long as I did a couple of jobs for you." Naruto questioned calmly, but his eyes said otherwise due to the murderous intent laced in them. One of the image responded. My apologies Fox, they were new recruits who wished to test their worth out in the field. The answer made the blonde hybrid smile, but not in a good way. I see, well if that's the case then they failed and are now chopped up into ground beef by yours truly. Fox stated and his smile turned into a frown. So if you don't want me to cut down your numbers or you for that matter, don't do it again or it's your head I'll be after next. His eyes flashed to red for a few seconds, emphasizing that he was not kidding around. Why Monsieur Fox, we completely understand and it will not happen again. Another voice with a French accent replied. For all of your sakes it better not. Satsuki warned in an icy tone. So long as you keep your end of the deal, no harm will be done to the old man or anyone else you're affiliated with. A feminine voice said. Fine, let's go Harem, we're wasting sunlight. The sooner we get these missions done the better. Star City, Star Lab facility. Freeze. Don't move. Several security guards had their UMP-45 submachine guns aimed at White Fox, aka Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, who was standing before the armed guards. Behind him it looked like a hellstorm went through the large hallway consisting of countless others being slammed and indented into the wall, as well as having slash marks across their chests and look like they've been beaten senseless but not dead, with the ground littered with ammunitions and guns cut in half. Fox looked them in a nonchalant fashion, holding his sheathed blade Kushinada in his left hand. We will gun you down if you take one more st. His lips curl up into a smile, and he dashed towards the remaining guards' fire. They all fired upon the armor-clad ninja, but it was in vain due to his inhuman speed, avoiding every single bullet as he zipped left and right. As he bypassed two guards, two red streaks hit the guards, causing them to cry out and collapse on the ground. Damn it he's too fast arg. He didn't get to finish due being struck down by a vertical slash from the crimson blade and continues with his assault. He knocks the weapon out of the last guard's hand with a swat of the scabbard and draws Kushinada halfway, pressing the sharp edge against the frightened man's neck. Please don't kill me he begged. Fox stared at him for a few minutes before smiling and sheathing his blade. The guard sighed in relief but gasps out when the assailant punches him hard in the gut, but only hard enough to knock him out and he collapsed onto the ground. Didn't plan on it. Fox replied back before heading to the next floor via the elevator to meet up with his partner. Ina Lance aka Black Canary had come to the facility when she learned of the disturbance and gasped at the sight. In the hallway of the evacuated facility, the broken and bleeding bodies of countless security guards laid across the place. She snapped of her stupor and ran over to one of them, kneels down to check his pulse to find him alive, especially from the painful groan he let out. The heroine reaches up to her ear and presses the comm link. This is Black Canary, I'm gonna need some assistance at Star Labs. She informed while scanning the damage to the man's body. The suspect is capable of taking down multiple guards and seemed to be armed with a blade, judging from the cuts. They appear to be alive but are in need of medical assistance, so if anyone from the league got this I'll need backup ASAP. Gunfire echoed from the upper rooms and instantly took off to find a way upstairs to stop the culprit. Fox slammed a guard into a wall, getting a gurgling scream from him. One tried to rush at him with a nightstick when he had his back turned, but the hooded blonde stopped him in his tracks with a kick to the gut without even looking behind him and then threw the guy at the stunned guard. The strength and force behind the throw sent them both crashing into a glass wall into an executive office. Another tried to blindside him, but he easily sidesteps, grabs the guy's wrists and flips him over, sending him flying and crashing into a wall before falling down. Sighing in annoyance, Fox reaches into his hood and presses his comm link. Hey Haim, you get the chip yet? Naruto asked his girlfriend while slapping away a punch from another guard and delivering a knee strike to his sternum. Almost, I just bypassed the last security systems. Good because I'm starting to get. He stopped in the middle of his sentence and stopped a boot that would have struck him in the head had he not stopped the appendage with his forearm. He wrapped his hand around the limb and sent the figure flying with a throw, but said person adjusted her figure and landed back onto her feet and got into a fighting stance. Bored I call you back. What? Why what's going? He cut the link off and fully turned around to see Black Canary in her fighting stance. Hello, and who might you be? Surely not security judging from your outfit. He questioned and had to admit she didn't look bad whatsoever, and judging from her physique, she trained her body to its peak but kept it perfectly balanced so that her speed or strength wasn't hindered whatsoever. Black Canary. She answered and noticed the sheathed katana strapped to the left side of his belt. I take it you're the culprit that did all this? What gave it away? The broken guards and the collateral damage? Fox asked, sporting a cheeky grin on his face. As much as I'd like to play with you beautiful, I'm on a schedule, so he slowly reached for the hilt of his blade, causing her to tense up but chuckle. Relax, I'm not gonna use my blade on you, it goes against my code of honor. He replied. The killer with a conscience, that's a first. She commented and once again he chuckled. Thanks now if you'll excuse me with lightning like Speedy drew his sword, releasing a streak of crimson slashes around him. Canary covered her face from the burst of air he released from the slashes, and when she opened her eyes, she saw him in a Badajutsu stance with a crimson blade halfway drawn, while the ceiling was outlined with thin reddish-orange cuts, and once he sheathed it with a click. It collapsed, and her eyes widened when a desk and large fax machine descended upon her person. She was forced to jump back lest she gets crushed from the objects. Canary noticed her assailant leaping up to the next floor and dashed to the opening and jumps upwards, grabbing onto the edge, and pushes her full body weight up into the next floor, only to see her quarry dashing towards the elevator and goes after him in hot pursuit. Fox smirks as he hears her footsteps. "I admire persistence, lady, but not to this extent," he called out before stopping to draw his blade. He cuts through a nearby pillar twice and kicks the projectile towards the blonde beauty. He managed to somersault over it and land back on the ground, pursuing her target. Fox's smile grows as Kusanada glows red from the energy he channeling into her and faster than the eye could see, unleashes a series of slashes that looked more like blurs of red energy streaks, and this time, large pieces of debris collapsed from the ceiling and cuts her pursuit off. With that he leapt up into the opening, heading to the roof of the building. Black Canary uses her infamous canary cry, releasing a high-pitched scream and sonic waves that shatter the debris into nothing before stopping and using the broken pillar as leverage to hop up into the next building that lead to the top floor. Fox made it to the top of the building viewing the sunset. "A beautiful sight, wouldn't you say?" he asked Black Canary, who took a few steps forward and stopped, keeping her distance from her unknown foe. "Indeed, too bad it'll be your last after I drag you to jail," she answered back only to hear the man laugh in a manner like it was a joke. "Is that so? Well, since my rider partner aren't here yet, I guess I can play with you for a bit." He fully turned around with his arms folded, but Canary knew from his posture there was more to him than his mastery with a blade and could tell this guy was highly trained in hand-to-hand combat like she was. Canary smirks back at him and gets into a karate stance. Her assailant smiles back and gets into the same stance. "Shall we dance?" "Let's." Metal Gear Rising. "Revengeance, the only thing I know for real." Jetstream Sam's theme. "Ladies first." He insisted, getting a small grin from his fellow blonde. "If you insist." She lunges forward, swinging a right jab which he blocked and dodged a series of left and right jabs she unleashed on him. Canary spun in an attempt to do a reversal elbow strike, but Fox stopped it with his palm. He grabbed her arm and flung the heroine over his shoulder and sent her flying. She adjusts her body and lands right back in her feet, skidding back a little. Canary looks up and her eyes widened when she saw Hooded Ninja descend at her with a flying kick, forcing her flip to the left. As his foot made contact, the ground cracked underneath the strength behind the kick. "Is that all you've got?" Fox taunted cheekily. "Not even close," Canary answered back. She leapt into the air and performed an aerial spin kick which he blocked with his forearm, but she caught him off guard and struck him in the jaw with a left hook. As she touched the ground, she delivered a roundhouse kick to his chest, making him stumble back. She leaps forward, places her hand on his shoulder, and uses it as a spring to leap over his form, land and knock him off his feet with a sweep kick. Luckily, Fox plants his hand on the ground and flips back up on his feet and hops back. Canary get back in her fighting stance. Wider opponent did the same with his smile growing bigger. "Now this is a fight," he declared, and his fellow blonde raised a brow at the excitement in his voice. "Her hired mercenary, your behavior is odd," she replied. Fox simply shrugged his shoulders at the notion. "Yeah, I get that a lot," he stated before grabbing the hilt of his sword and spun around, deflecting several trick arrows that were fired by Black Canary's ex-boyfriend Oliver Queen aka Green Arrow, along with Roy Harper, who goes by the name Speedy. "And what do we have here?" Robin Hood and his sidekick quiver. "It's Speedy." The red-clad archer snapped back and aimed his glare at Green Arrow, who chuckled at the name. "Don't laugh, he insulted you as well." "True, but I take being called Robin Hood as a compliment, even though I don't steal from the rich and give to the poor," Green Arrow replied back, while Canary and Speedy had to resist the urge to roll their eyes. "Nevertheless, give it up, buddy, or we'll have to." Abler landed in between two, being none other than Satsuki, who knocked Green Arrow off his feet with a sweep kick and hits the ground hard, surprising Roy and Dinah. The young archer didn't have time to react as she grabbed him by the collar and knees him hard in the gut, making him cough out before she leapt over him and kicked him the back of the head, making him fall on all fours. Fox took this opportunity to vanish and appear in front of a distracted Canary and delivers a powerful palm strike to her stomach and sent her flying backwards and hitting the ground hard. "Well, hello to you too, Harem," Fox greeted as the ravenet landed before him and then elbowed him in the gut. "Ow. What was that for?" "You cut me off again and I'll cut you off from seeing all of this," she warned her boyfriend, who blushed in embarrassment and rubbed the back of his head. Sorry, I was a little sidetracked by the sexy lady chasing me." Satsuki glanced at Black Canary and rolled her eyes. I figured as much. She mumbled before pulling out a flare stick and lights it up, releasing a green smoke and waves it around. A few minutes later the sound of a blade's whirling could be heard and a chopper descended from the sky and a ladder drops from the hatch and Satsuki is the first to grab it. Oh no you don't. Speedy shouted as he and his mentor pull out a couple of trick arrows and take aim, but Fox reacts faster and pulls 2 demon windmill shuriken out and flings them at the archers and the whirling blades slice through their bows, much to their shock, and the projectiles return back to the user. Fox grabs the ladder and waves bye to the heroes as the chopper took off into the air. Song ends. After getting settled in the chopper, Naruto pulls his hood down and lets out a sigh with his katana leaned against the wall, while Satsuki pulled her mask down and pulls out a case containing a blue and black data chip. So what took you so long to get that little trinket, Harem? The blonde asked the female Uchiha. Security's a bitch. Was her answer, getting a chuckle from him. I bet it was. Say, why is it that you get to do the snatch and grab while I have to deal with security? He questioned and she responded with a deadpan expression. Because you'd get bored sticking to the shadows, Naruto-kun, and if I remember, you almost had the entire Yakuza organization out for blood during our mission in Tokyo. She informed the blonde. Oh yeah, I remember that, but you killed the chairman, so wouldn't that be your fault? I just cut down a couple of grunts and lieutenants, but you Ms. Uchiha took out the king. He reminded her. Satsuki pondered on it and shrugged with her legs crossed. That was personal. I was disguised as a dancer for his entertainment and the fat pig grabbed my ass. A coy smile formed on her face as she saw his brow twitch. Maybe next time you could be the dancer. Naruto raised a brow and shook his head. Nah, I'll stick with stalling security because if some fat greasy guy grabbed my ass, I'd go on a rampage and need therapy afterwards. He replied while his girlfriend giggled. Washington, D.C. Cadmus facility. After handing the chip to one of the pilots, the duo were taken over to an abandoned warehouse where a red 2012 Camaro was waiting for them. Shall we? Naruto asked and his girlfriend nodded. They perform a hand sign, engulfing them in a puff of smoke, and when it cleared, they were now in their business outfits with Satsuki wearing a pair of black shades over her eyes. The agent waiting for them tossed Naruto the keys and left. It's a shame we can't take in the sights, but business comes first. The blonde stated. There's always next time. Satsuki said as he hit the unlock button while she entered through the passenger's seat. Once Naruto got in and turned the ignition on, they were given the coordinates to the Cadmus building via the built-in GPS unit and took off into the roadway. Underground Cadmus facility. Satsuki's right hand was twitching in a dangerous fashion due to the fact that Mark Desmond, the head of the Cadmus facility, gave her and Naruto a tour of the place and explained the experiments and projects that needed to be protected, despite informing the middle-aged man several times and was tempted to wring his neck just to shut him up. Fox mentally chuckled at her annoyed and slightly pissed expression, but also took in the sights, seeing the staff at work, and also noticed some bizarre gray-skinned creatures called Genomers in cylindrical tanks and seemed to be powering up the generators. There were a few who also appeared to be the size of elephants that seemed to be used for the heavy labor, some that were human-sized and seemed to be security, with the smaller bio creatures being the size of small monkeys, and from the way their horns glowed red, they were probably used in communication purposes and for giving orders to their kin. As Desmond went on about the achievements, Naruto interrupted with a cough. It's nice to hear yourself talk, Doc, but care to explain about the bizarre creatures you've got lurking about the place? Desmond scowled at being interrupted but decided not to retort back. You mean the Genomers? They are my greatest creations, created with the purpose to do my bidding and protect Cadmus. One of the gnomes landed on his shoulder and stared at the two ninja. Satsuki rolled her eyes, but then another landed on her shoulder. She picked it up by the scruff of its neck and stared at the creature, who tilted its head to the side before being placed on the ground. You know, when you get past a bizarre appearance, they look kind of cool. Fox stated in amusement as the gnome once again climbed up on her arm and sat back on her shoulder. I think it likes you, Harem. She glanced at the bioengineered creature and shrugged, stroking the Genomer under the chin with a finger and got it to purr in content, which Desmond didn't like if the scowl he had on his face wasn't noticeable. The gnomes are not cute, Desmond growled, and as for you, get back to scouting the area and maintaining surveillance with the others. The creature yipped out in fright and scuttled back to the ceiling. Now that was rude, yelling at the poor fella like that. Fox said while the man tilted his glasses upwards. It matters not, that thing is an item, a tool to do my bidding and will do as told or else, and the same goes for anyone under my authority. He said in a matter-of-fact tone. Really? That's odd because my partner and I aren't under your employment, Desmond, so you have no authority over us. Fox replied back. Desmond frowned and was about to retort at the man until an armored gloved hand grabbed his collar and was pulled close to the blonde's face, much to his surprise, but it soon turned to fear as he saw the icy stare that sent a shiver down his spine. "We don't answer to you, we answer to a higher authority, and our objective is to enhance security and nothing more. You let us do our job and you do yours and we'll be fine, but cross either one of us and you'll wish you've never been born." Fear laced Desmond's eyes as he saw Fox's flash red for a second before returning to their natural blue. "Do we have an understanding, Doc?" "Yes, I completely understand," he answered with a slight whimper in his voice, and Fox released him. "But now would you be so kind as to show us what we'll be protecting exactly, seeing as your little gremlins are scurrying about?" The man nodded with a slight scowl on his face and motioned them to follow him down a hallway that seemed to be laced in a flesh-like substance with what appeared to be eggs rested against it. "And here I thought Orochimaru's labs were creepy," Satsuki thought, noticing the curled-up form of a gnome sleeping in the pods. They approached a large steel door and Desmond proceeds to type in the code from the panel until the light blinks green and the door hisses open. They enter a laboratory and the doctor lead them to what appeared to be a crystal cylindrical tank with the KR symbol on the front. "This is what you'll be protecting." In the tank, lying down on a metal table in a sleeping state, was a girl who from appearance seemed to be around 16 to 17. She had long raven hair that stopped to the middle of her back, along with a slight heart-shaped face that made her both cute and fierce, and completing it was one voluptuous figure that was very desirable. She was taller than normal girls her age and was garbed in a full-body white suit that left her forearms and hands bare, and said suit hugged her figure, showing some muscle that gave her an Amazonian look that added to her facial features, made her look like a younger Wonder Woman, and also noted the large red S shield around her impressive D cups. He couldn't help but whistle at the sleeping girl. "Hey Harem, if you happen to have a long-lost sister, I think we found her, and she's cute just like you." The female Uchiha smiled under her mask at the response, since this supergirl did look just like her, only her physique was more toned. "She is not cute as you call her, it is a weapon and like the gnomes a tool to fulfill my purpose," Desmond rudely replied and didn't notice the glare Satsuki was giving him from behind his back. "Well, I think she is cute, Doc." He walked around the tank, studying her form, judging from the symbol on her chest, she's either related to the big blue Boy Scout or a clone, but if she's a clone, shouldn't she be a male? Indeed, but due to some minor adjustments, the clone's genetic structure was altered, mainly because the female species of any race tend to mature faster than males. It was very difficult to change her genetic make since her donor's DNA structure being different. He spoke in a way that sounded like he was proud of his achievement. "Her original purpose is to be Superman's replacement should he die or kill him if he ever turned from the light. Right now the gnomes are educating her via telepathy with every form of the planet's history and knowledge, which will allow her to interact socially." Fox rubbed his chin in thought as he noticed the two gnomes perched on top of the tank with their horns glowing red. Suddenly the lights flashed red and alarms were going off. Odd, I didn't think fire drills were practiced in an underground facility. "There are intruders in the facility. Hurry up and deal with it." He would have ranted on until Satsuki's glared at him with cold onyx eyes. "Didn't we just have this conversation earlier stating that we are not your security guards? If you want these so-called intruders dealt with, have the head of security guardian deal with them along with your bio-engineered pets," Fox remarked as he wasn't interested in dealing with some small-time thieves. "Fine, just make sure the weapon isn't disturbed while I check into this," Desmond said, barely keeping his anger in check, and heads out of the chamber. "I'm going to kill him after this mission is done," Satsuki says in an annoyed tone while Naruto chuckled. "Trust me Harem, the world would be a better place if you did so." From the barely lit ceiling, a gnome lands on his shoulder. "Hey little guy, want to keep us company?" The gnome lets out a gurgling noise that he believed sounds like a yes and got a chuckle from the hooded blonde while Satsuki shook her in amusement as she watched him interacted with the creature. Moments later, Fox was meditating on the other side of the room while Satsuki was upside down on the ceiling, using her chakra to stick on the surface with her arms folded under her chest and her eyes closed. Earlier, one of the doctors who was under orders from Desmond to check on the stature of the female clone Kryptonian under the control of a gnome due to the blank expression on her face, and after doing so left through the large metal door. Fox, the meditating blonde's eyes snapped open and narrowed as he heard the voice, "Do not be alarmed, I am XX, a genomorph like my brethren who was created by Desmond to fulfill Cadmus's purpose." "Well, it's nice to meet you somewhat, but don't you know it's considered an invasion of privacy to enter someone's mind without their permission?" Fox questioned. "My apologies, I have no intention of doing any harm to you or your partner, but I do require your assistance. It has to do with Project KR, my sister who like us was created by Desmond." "Okay, what do you want?" Fox asked the telepathic genomorph but heard the doors were open. "Hold that thought, I've got some uninvited guests." Very well, but please leave the young heroes intact. Fox slowly rose up and picked up his sword, stepping backwards into the shadows as the doors fully opened with Robin, Kid Flash, and Aqualad entering the lab. Satsuki saw them enter watching from the ceiling and slowly reached for the hilt of her Chikudo, preparing to attack, but glanced at Naruto who did a hand gesture that told her to not attack for the moment, and she silently nodded. As the door closed behind them, Robin disabled the door by hacking through their network, using his hologram computer to keep Guardian and the bioengineered creatures out, but unfortunately they were unable to find another way out, so they were trapped. There, the door is disabled. We're safe, Robin assured them. And trapped, Aqualad finished as he didn't see an exit in this room. Ugh eyes. Kid Flash called out, getting their attention. You might want to see this. He proceeded to press some keys from a modulator that was in front of some type of pod. A beeping sound came from the pod, and it then lit up. The three sidekicks' eyes widened when they saw who was in it. Whoa. Was all Kid Flash managed to say while Robin and Aqualad remained stunned as they saw Project KR resting soundly in the tank. I'll say, who is she? Robin wondered before noticing the S symbol on her chest. That Superman symbol. Aqualad narrowed his eyes in suspicion and wondered the same thing. It's possible she's related to him, and if she is, we need to get her out of this facility. He said. And how do you plan to do that? The group heard the voice around the lab and were now on alert. Who's there? Aqualad called out only for the source of the voice, aka Fox walked out of the shadows smirking at the teenage with his hand resting on the hilt of Kushinada. Well, if it isn't the sidekicks. Care to explain why you're trespassing on private property? He questioned. Robin was the first to snap out of his stupor and glare at the hooded man. Care to explain who you are and what she is? The boy wonder replied back, getting prepared to fight should the situation require him to. Fox simply rubbed his chin in thought and shook his head. No, I don't feel like telling you who she is, but as for me, the name's Fox and I'm here to enhance security for this facility, and as I mentioned earlier, you three are trespassing on private property, and as such, I am entitled to deal with you in any way, shape or form, and considering the situation you're in, I'd advise you to surrender. He suggested. And if we don't? Kid Flash questioned. A grin forms on Fox's face and responds by pushing his thumb up on the guard, revealing a glimpse of his favorite weapon. Then I hope the Justice League provides a good life insurance policy for sidekicks. Fox finished as his grin became feral, eyeing the young heroes like a wolf when it corners a lamb with no way out. It appears we have no other choice but to fight. Aqualad states and draws his water bearers with a hardened water shaping into a pair of blades. Kid Flash on the other smirks triumphantly. This'll be over quickly. With that, the redhead rushes at him at speeds that would make Rock Lee and Might Guy proud, but being a speed demon himself, Fox noticed his movement was too straightforward and predictable, which in his opinion was bad for the speedster. So with a slight adjustment of his foot, he turned sideways as the yellow blur zipped past him. KF Kirsten tried to stop, but sadly crashed into the wall hard. Satsuki saw this from the ceiling and a sweat drop formed behind her head. That was pathetic. She thought as Kid Flash groaned in pain. Next. Robin responded by throwing several shuriken at the hooded blonde who easily deflected them all with his sheathed blade before grabbing the last one in between his index and middle finger. He was about to speak out until he heard something beeping and looked at the throwing weapon, which was blinking red before turning green and unleashes a small explosion, releasing smoke around the area while the boy wonder smirks. Is that all you've got? His eyes widened when he heard Fox, who stood behind Robin with his back turned to him, sporting a bored expression on his face. Robin pulls out a pair of Eskrima sticks and was about to spin around to strike Fox in the back, but the sword-wielding warrior was faster and struck him in the back with a strong roundhouse kick that sent him flying and crashing through an empty tank and into the wall. Robin. Aqualad ran forward to go assist his friend only to block a red blur that would have cut him in two. Naruto smirks at the Atlantean with Kushinada pressed against the water-hardened blades and pushed him back. And then there was one, do yourself a favor kid and surrender. He insisted. Never, I'm not going down that easily. Aqualad declared, getting into his fighting stance and readying his weapons. Fox eyes and rolls his neck a few times. Suit yourself. He twirled his blade a few times in a nonchalant fashion before slamming the tip of it into the hardened floor. He places his left hand around the lower part of the hilt and dashes forward, raking his blade across the ground. As soon as he got close, he performed an upward slash at the dark-skinned Atlantean, who leapt back, barely dodging the blade that would have cut him in two. Fox then adjusted his blade and swung downwards twice while Aqualad was on the defensive blocking the two-hit combo before jumping back again when the hooded blonde spun around and attempted to hit him with a horizontal slash. Come on kid, is that all you've got? Fox taunted as he delivered a thrust towards Aqualad. The water bearer in his left hand morphed into a shield and blocked the attack and skids back a little. The Quolid decides to go on the offense and rushes at Fox, swinging the water-shaped blade at his armored chest, but Fox easily evades the strike by hopping to the left with a small grin on his face. The dark-skinned teen willed the shape of the blade into a whip and swung it in a wide arc. Fox ducks as it sails over his head only for another water whip to wrap around his ankle and cries out in surprise as he was zapped with electricity that was conducted through the glowing eel tattoos on the Quolid's arm. Fox raised his blade and swung it downwards, cutting the whip off and dispersing the water from the tip. "Heh, now that was shocking," he commented, "not bad kid, you're well trained in art of combat, you've got potential, but you're lacking something very important." The Quolid raised a brow at this statement and was about to respond only for Fox to appear in front of him in a burst of speed, catching him off guard and struck him in the face with the hilt of his sword, making him stumble back. He then grips the scabbard halfway and swings it to the left, hitting the 16-year-old protege of Aquaman in the back, causing him to spin before facing him again as the hooded blonde swung the sheathed blade upward and struck him hard in the chin. The force behind it sent him flipping back and hitting the ground hard, groaning as his jaw throbbed from being struck with the hard sheath, despite his skin being more durable than a normal human's. "And the thing you lack, young hero, is drive." The Quolid gets back up, rubbing his jaw, keeping his eyes on his opponent. "What do you mean?" Fox simply stares at him and shakes his head. "Forget it, you'll find out soon enough, that is if you live to see the next sunrise." He answers, drawing his blade once again, unaware of the sleeping girl slowly waking up from the pod. In the lab, the sounds of a beatdown echoed through the area. A Quolid cried out in pain as he was sent flying through an empty tank and into the wall before sliding down, groaning in pain and losing his bearers. Kid Flash attempts to rush Fox using his super speed, only to get snatched by the back of his collar, spun around and slammed into the ground. Before he had the chance to get up, his quarry planted his foot onto his chest hard, making him gasp out as the wind was knocked out him. The cyborg warrior sighs in disappointment while his crimson-colored blade rested on his shoulder. "You do realize I'm not even trying, right?" he informed the pinned speedster who tried to pry his foot off his chest. Robin flings several batarangs at him, and he nonchalantly cuts them down with a few lazy swings, though the last one erupted into smoke. Taking this opportunity, Robin leaps into the smoke in an attempt to blindside Fox, but to his surprise, a black and white armored boot shoots out and strikes him directly in the gut. The protege of the Dark Knight gasps as he flew off and crashes into the ground, clutching his stomach in pain and trying to prevent himself from letting out what he had for breakfast. As the smoke cleared, it revealed Fox yawning in a bored fashion, placing his foot back on the floor, remained on a wheezing Kid Flash, who looked like he was gonna pass out if the hint of blue on his face was a notice. The Quolid sprung back to his feet and rushes as Fox with his electricity arching around his arms, only to be on the receiving end of a volley of what looked like glowing senbon hitting him in non-vital spots, but he cried out in surprise and a little pain, due to his physiology being more durable than normal human skin, and hits the ground and lays there. Unable to move his body due to the electricity numbing his central nervous system. Satsuki landed beside her partner, glancing at the down heroes. "So what should we do with them? How about letting us go?" Kid Flash requested with what little air he could muster due to the armored foot nearly crushing his lungs and ribsage. Fox on the other hand smirks at the lame request. "Nice try, kid," but he would said more, but he was tackled hard by a white blur and sent crashing into the wall hard, freeing Kid Flash from capture. Satsuki's eyes widened and leapt back in order to avoid a flying fist and landed next to Fox. "Ow," he muttered, rubbing his head in pain from the impact that felt like he was hit by a high-speed tank. He got up to see what hit him, and it was none other than the angry form of Supergirl. Bolly sat up, catching his breath before smiling and approaching the female Kryptonian. "Thanks for the save, beautiful, that guy nearly crushed me," he said gratefully, reaching out and placing a hand on her shoulder. As soon as she felt contact, she backhands him in the face and once again he's in La La Land. "Wow, that poor kid just can't catch a break, and neither can I," Fox mumbled as picks himself, and his gaze meets the enraged ones of the female Kryptonian. The stare down lasted for a few seconds until a smile crept up Fox's lips. "Heh, nice eyes." That compliment resulted in Supergirl snarling like an angry tiger and charges at them both. Satsuki shuntions to the left while her partner remained in a loose stance, ready to draw his sword, and contemplates on how he should handle her. He could incapacitate her with his blade, but he didn't really want to deal with a light or that prick of a doctor to bitch about him breaking their weapon, and mentally sighs and sheathes his weapons. She throws a punch at him, but he jumps over it and does a front flip over her form, resulting in the Ravenette's fist slamming into the wall, creating a large crater in the process, while the whole room shakes. Damn, if she had blonde hair, then she'd be a teenage version of Tsunade Bachan. He thought as she pulled her arm out of the crater she caused. She glares at him and rushes at him again, swinging a series of left and right hooks that he dodged and weaved around, sporting his smirk which infuriated her more. "Brah." She swung another right hook which Naruto avoided, but this time he wrapped both hands around her wrist and judo flips her over his shoulder and send her crashing into the crystal tank she was previously in and reducing it to nothing. She gets up again snarling in anger at the blonde warrior who chuckled at her. "You're gonna have to do better than that, missy," he taunted. She rushes at him once again and swings another wild punch at his skull which he somersaults over and lands behind her. She attempts to backhand him, but he ducks and knocks her off her feet and Supergirl hit the ground. "Come on little girl, if you're gonna hit me then hit me," he says. Satsuki on the other hand was watching this one-sided fight with boredom. Sure, the cloned female Kryptonian had all the powers of her donor, but she lacked control, and without control, bystanders would get killed. Supergirl's eyes glow red and fires 2 red beams at Fox. The hooded blonde draws his blade and deflects the twin beams which cut through the floor like a hot knife through butter. "Beautiful eyes, deadly gaze," he commented before taking off in a burst of speed and vanishes. He appeared before a surprised Supergirl with his right hand reared back, grabs her face, and slams her heads first into the ground. But terrible aim. Fox picks her up and throws her into the vault door the young heroes entered through. She shakes her head from the impact and glares at his smirking face, and all it did was piss her off more, so she hovered in the air, turns around and grabs the valve. The sound of metal straining echoed through the room as Supergirl slowly pulled the large steel door out until she successfully did so and held it over her head. At first Fox was surprised at the level of her strength as she held an object 10 times her size, but then sported a serious look with Satsuki appearing beside him, with her Chikudo drawn and her Sharingan activated. The duo glanced at each other and nodded, and the female Uchiha channels lightning chakra through her blade to increase its cutting power, and Fox draws Kushinada, and it glows red. Brah! Supergirl throws the vault door at them like it was a pebble. Satsuki and Fox vanish and appear as the vault seemed to fly past them with their blades drawn, and the 10-inch thick steel door was reduced to chunks of metal that clattered everywhere, leaving the girl of steel stunned. Unaware that Fox was gathering energy into his right palm which took the shape of a spiraling ball while Satsuki's entire left arm was coated in lightning. They descended to her shocked form and thrust their arms forward. Rasengan. Todori. Their signature attack slammed directly into her torso. Electricity and waves of energy dance around the lab from the colliding attacks, and Supergirl is jettisoned out the lab and into the hallway. The duo land on the ground as they hear a crash rock the place, and they sheath their swords. Fox whistled lowly at the damage they caused before turning his gaze at the entrance and sighing in annoyance. "Why am I not surprised?" he muttered. Satsuki blinked in confusion, wondering what he meant, and turns her head in the direction he's looking only to see Supergirl slowly trudge back into the lab. She didn't look worse for wear, minus her hair being a little ruffled and messy, as well as the rips in her solar suit, especially around the torso where it was torn, revealing her flat and toned stomach. The Qualid, Kid Flash, and Robin were slowly regaining consciousness from their beatdown by the hooded blonde. "Aw man, did someone get the number of the freight train that hit me?" the speedster asked while rubbing his throbbing jaw from the sucker punch delivered by Supergirl. Robin was too busy looking at the destruction caused by their quarries. "Guys, I think we're in way over our heads with these two, and a tactical retreat is in order," the boy wonder states. "Agreed," a Qualid replied. "What he said, and all we have to is get past them." Damn, KF muttered in the end, due to Fox and Satsuki standing in between them and their hope for escape along with Supergirl. "Persistent are we?" Fox questioned the growling clone who looked ready to charge and would have if a gnome hadn't hopped on her shoulder and used its telepathy to make her freeze up and stand at attention with a blank expression on her face. "What is going on here?" Desmond shouted as he, XX, and Guardian entered what's left at the lab, and the Mad Doctor looked like he was gonna blow a blood vessel. "I told you to protect the weapon, not fight it." "Shut your pie hole, you old coot." She woke up cranky and angry when I was duking it out with the brats. Fox retorted back. "Hey, we're not brats." Kid Flash shouted, but his mouth was covered by Robin's hand. "Probably not a good idea to piss off the guy who can chop us up into hamburger." Robin growled through his teeth. "You two imbeciles were given orders to watch the weapon, but you can't even follow that," Desmond exclaims as he approached them. "When the board gets notice of this incident, it'll be your heads they take and not mine." Fox's brow twitched dangerously due to the man poking him in the chest, and if there was one thing he hated was some pencil neck prick talking down to him like he was lower than dirt. "Poke me again, and that arm will no longer be attached to your body," the blonde said quietly in a tone so dark it would make even the Dark Knight shiver, which the doc did, taking a slight step back before glaring at him. "Just deal with those intruders," he says, getting a nod from the blonde. Qualid, Robin and Kid Flash tense up when they watch him turn around and draw his blade. "Sure, just do me favor, Doc." He twirled his blade a few times before pausing. The others wondered why he stopped until he spun around and thrusts his blade towards the middle of Desmond's chest. Squelch. "Ugh." Everyone's eyes widened in shock or horror from Fox's action as he ran Kusanada through the middle of Desmond's chest cavity and out his back. The man's body trembled as he stared at the blade impaled into his body and back up to see the hooded figure's eyes. You can't. He coughed up some blood and fell to his knees, feeling his vision fade and lifeblood staining his clothes. You know the only reason you're alive is because your bosses still had use for you. I on the other hand just don't like you, so it's no skin off my nose. He pulled the blade out of the soon-to-be-dead doctor and kicks him into a terminal and approaches the still form of Supergirl. Okay little guy, let her go. He gives the gnome a gentle pat on the head and its glowing horns recede. Supergirl and Gordon groan as they attempt to regain their senses. Oh wow, what happened? She wondered. Whoa, it can talk. Kid Flash stated, only to be on the receiving end of a glare. Yes, she can talk. Supergirl growled at the yellow and red-clad speedster. Word to the wise, don't render someone who can melt your head off with a glare or snap you in two like a twig in that term. Fox advised now what to do with you three. He rubbed his chin in thought as he pondered on their fates before looking at Satsuki, who shrugged her shoulders. How about letting us go with our limbs intact? Kid Flash suggested. The hooded blonde gazed at him and the other two for a while until his lips curve upwards into a smile. Okay. If you think we're gonna let you gut us open like you did that other guy, then you got another thing. Robin paused in his rant and blinked rapidly at the guy. Wait, what did you say? Robin asked and Fox's smirk grew. I said okay, on one condition though. Fox requested. And that request is? Aqualid questioned with narrow eyes and watched him approach the Ravenette, who blinked in confusion as he set a hand on her shoulder. Take her with you. Fox turned her around and gently pushed her towards the three young heroes. Even though my orders from my clients were to guard her, I think she'll be better off with you three than spending the rest of her life as a weapon until her use is no longer needed, isn't that right XX? Naruto questioned to the human-sized Genomorph, who nodded in agreement. Correct XX answered. Sister, your purpose is not to live in the darkness like we have to, you have the opportunity to leave and create your own life. But Cadmus is my home. She replied back, only for Satake to shake her head in a negative fashion. The home is a place where you feel safe and not locked away like a lab rat, she replied to the clone Kryptonian, but it is your choice to either stay here or feel what it's like to be free. Supergirl looks at Fox first, then Satsuki, Aqualid, Robin, Kid Flash, XX and the other gnomes that gathered. I choose freedom. She answered and got a nod of approval from her brother. Fox smiles warmly and pulls down his hood, revealing his face to the others, and Supergirl's cheeks turn slightly pink from seeing his handsome yet feral facial structure. Then go and find your purpose out in the world, Supergirl, but know this, somewhere in your life you will come through a crossroad on what you truly desire, so don't let others choose your life, you must do so yourself. He advised and got a nod from her, though having friends to help you would be beneficial. Now get going, the exit's not too far from here. The young hero carefully passed Fox, just to make sure he wouldn't stab them in the back, but Supergirl stops and looks back at him before joining up with the others. Once they were gone, Fox walks over to Guardian, who was still feeling the migraine in his cranium, and pats him on the shoulder. You're gonna need a whole bottle of aspirin to get rid of that headache, buddy. He joked with the armor-clad hero, smiling weakly. Make it two, my head will be throbbing for weeks. He muttered while slowly getting back on his feet. So what will happen to Cadmus now that Desmond's out of the picture? Beats me, but I think you would be better taking charge of this commie-forsaken place, so long as you don't permit any illegal experiments. Fox answered back as he placed his hood over his head again. Noted, but the only issue is the Genomorphs. I don't want them to be terminated, they were just following orders from Desmond, but I don't want myself or the associates who work here to be under control. Fox rubbed his chin and thought for a bit until an idea popped in his head. I think I might know someone who would be interested in having some little helpers around. He answered. Satsuki noticed the gleam in his eyes and sweat dropped. Is he thinking what I think he's thinking? She thought. Guardian gave the hooded blonde a questionable look, wondering who he had in mind. And who exactly would be interested in us, Mr. Fox? XX wondered as the blonde's grin grew even bigger. I can't believe I allowed you to talk me into this, Naruto. Ivo says as he watched the Genomorphs work on the underground city being constructed. G-Trolls were working on moving large pieces of debris and clearing out the area, while the G-Sprites were lighting up the ceilings. The gnomes were communicating with them via telepathy, while the elves were moving the smaller pieces of debris. Well, I couldn't just leave them to fend for themselves, Ivo. Naruto said as he adjusted his shades. Plus Satsuki-chan made a new friend. Sitting on the female Uchiha's shoulder was a gnome that was purring happily due to Satsuki stroking its chin in a gentle manner with her fingers. Apparently when they were transferring the Genomorphs to Ivo's underground bunker where he keeps all his top secret projects, the little grey creature hitched a ride in Naruto's coat pocket. Naruto figured they deserved a place to call home after being used as tools by the now-late doctor, and Guardian remained in charge of Cadmus and assures the Genomers that wished to stay at Cadmus, though his clients weren't too happy when they were informed of the incident. Flashback. This is most unsettling, Mr. Fox. Luther says behind the light visage killing Desmond is one thing, but allowing the sidekicks to take Project KR is another. Fox and Satsuki were in a darkened room surrounded by several light screens. Desmond was more of an annoyance, but as for your precious weapon, I was only informed to guard her and nothing more, and also you have the now late Desmond and yourselves to blame for giving her the option to think for herself. Fox replied back in an even tone, showing he was not afraid to speak his mind before them. Besides, sooner or later she would have gotten out of your grasp, and nothing short of Superman would be able to stop her, and the results would have been bad if the Justice League got notice of Cadmus's activities. Monsieur Fox does make a valid point, Brain stated, we should have been more thorough with Desmond in her programming and become our greatest asset against the heroes, no. Indeed, a deep baritone voice said the loss of Supergirl is just a minor setback and we will get back on schedule. Were you able to retrieve the formula during the tour of the facility? Fox shuffled into his coat pocket and pulls out a small square case and pops it open, revealing several vials of a light blue liquid that was contained in several cylindrical glasses. Yeah, I got the vials and they're in good condition as promised. So the Fox manages to get something done right. A snooty arrogant voice said in a gleeful fashion which annoyed the blonde and his partner. Watch it, witch boy, I have no problem shaving you or that demon cat of yours. Fox warned while patting the hilt of his blade. Wow, you've got some nerve, you peepee. Enough, we didn't come to start meaningless squabbles, a calm collected voice says and ignores the grumbling of the witch boy before this meeting ends. I'm curious why you two didn't kill the sidekicks. Your combined skills would have been more than enough to eradicate them off the face of the earth. I have a good reason for that. 1. I don't need the Justice League targeting us, and while I am capable of taking down 4 or 5 of them, the whole group would have been a problem even for us, Fox answered. 2. They possess a lot of potential and can prove to be a challenge for us in the future, and lastly they didn't pose a threat to your motives. Not now they don't, but they could prove to be an even greater threat than the League, and should they then you two will be held responsible. The female voice advised. Fox chuckles darkly before pulling down his hood and looking back up at the screens, revealing his demonic eyes that glowed red and smiled viciously. Don't make threats you can't keep, lady, I'm the last person on this planet you want to piss off. He said in a tone so dark, his clients remained silent, though a few were cringing from his murderous gaze. Now if you'll excuse us, we have some business to take care of. After placing the case down on the floor, Fox and Satsuki walked into the shadows while the screens dissipated as well. Flashback end. That aside, the bioengineered creatures seemed to be taking their new home well and had more freedom than they did in Cadmus, so all seemed well for now. Los Angeles docks. 3 thugs were swerving wildly inside a moving truck with the tires screeching as the large vehicle made a sharp turn to the left. Damn it, that hooded clown took out 3 of our guys with no problems. Thug 1 seethed as the driver decided to slow down a bit. Yeah, but I think we lost him. Thug 2 said in relief. Same here, I think we're good. Unfortunately for the thug they weren't okay. Zipping around the opposite side on a red and black Yamaha motorcycle was Fox, who took off towards the truck at high speeds. Oh shit, there he is. Run him over. The third one shouts. The driver nods and presses his foot down on the accelerator. The truck's speed increases as it revved across the road with the intent of crushing the blonde. Fox smirks as he approaches the large vehicle, and once they were close enough, he swerves quickly to the left and draws Kushinada swiftly and slashes through the side. The left side of the truck tilts and skids across the road, turning sideways and crashing into several wooden crates, with the men inside screaming in fear. They were unaware of a large square containment unit flying out of the cargo hold and tumbling on the ground until it came to a stop while the truck crashes into a barge. Fox brings his motorbike to a halt as he watched the truck crash and parks it before strolling over to the thieves with his blade perched on his shoulder. One thug came falling out of the broken door, groaning in pain and trying to shake the cobwebs out of his head, unaware of Fox approaching him until he looks up at the man's smirking face. His eyes widen and notices his gun laying a few feet in front of him. He was pondering on whether to grab it or not, only for the hooded blonde to crush the weapon under his foot. The thug looks up and gulps as he saw the man inspect his crimson-colored blade in a nonchalant fashion. A little late for shopping, don't you think? Trying to make a quick buck out of whatever you were trying to steal, or did someone hire you to rob a truck fully of advanced technology? Fox questioned as he still kept his eyes on his blade. This is our gig, we wanted to make some cash with the stuff we took, and he did continue due to the blade planting right beside his head while Fox shook his head in disappointment. He crouches down in front of the trembling thug and gave him a look of annoyance. If you're gonna lie at least good at it," Fox chastised. "I know you're not bright enough to pull this off, so tell me the truth or having your skull rammed into a steel wall will be the least of your worries tonight." The thug paled in fright, especially when Fox's blade glimmered in the light. "No, no, I swear this is all." A beeping sound was heard, and the two turned their heads and noticed it was coming from the containment unit. It stops blinking and hisses, releasing some steam from the box. The top half splits open and separates, releasing what looked like an orange-skinned muscular being that was folded up in the fetal position until it raised its head and its eyes glowed red. "What the hell is that?" the thug questioned. "Your cargo." Fox pulls his blade out of the ground and turns from the thug. The hulking creature exits out of the crate and stood at its full height ranging up to 8'2". Its upper body was a dark orange color minus the green armbands around its forearm and sporting a mohawk-like hairdo, while its lower body was fully green with black around the ankles. The second thug crawls out of the broken window and also looks at the muscle-bound android. "What is that thing?" Amazo, a highly advanced cybernetic android with the ability to replicate the powers of super beings. Fox answers as Amazo took 2 steps forward. "What kind of super beings?" Amazo grabs the hull of a barge and lifts it over its head with one arm and rears it back. "Big ones." Amazo chucks it at Fox, and the blonde easily leaps over it as it passes by. Unfortunately, the goons weren't as lucky due to them screaming in terror and getting crushed by the 20-ton barge along with the truck, and a fiery explosion occurs as Fox lands back down on the ground. He glances at the fiery scene and grimaces at 2 of the now charcoal bodies coated in fire. "Ah, poor bastards," he mumbled before turning his attention back to Amazo. "That wasn't very nice, you know." The stone face's robot didn't say anything and started to slowly walk towards his new target. Okay, the memo was to keep Amazo from being stolen and acquire the head when the android was inactive. Fox mutters as he twirls his blade a few times and gets into a basic kendo stance. This might be fun. Metal Gear Rising Ost. Rules of nature. "En garde." Fox declares and dashes at the bulky android, performing a horizontal slash that the android blocks the strike with its forearm, but the edge of the blade manages to slightly dig into the fake flesh of the droid. Amazo rears his right arm back and swings downwards at the blonde, who jumps back. The punch makes contact with the concrete and leaves a decent-sized crater from the impact. As soon as he landed on the ground, Fox brings his sword against the concrete and dashes forward as his blade grinds against the concrete, leaving a thin trail as he approached his target and swings upwards. Amazo was able to leap back with only a small cut under its chin. Fox glances back at the bot and his lips curve upwards. "You're smarter than the average machine. Ivo really spoke highly of you until you malfunctioned." Amazo didn't reply back, but instead brought his hands up, raises them into the air, and brings them down onto the ground, causing a fissure to sail towards Fox. His blade glows red and raised it in the air, waiting for the earth-based move to get closer, and swings his sword down, releasing a gust of crimson wind that tears through the ground and cancels out the fissure. Unfortunately for Amazo, it kept coming until it made contact and sent him sailing through the road and inside a barge, leaving a decent-sized hole in it, along with a series of slash marks. Maybe I overdid it. Fox wondered as he stroked his chin until the barge started to rise up a little and was chucked at him. He instantly swung his blade downwards and splits it in 2 before smiling again. As he saw Amazo's glowing red eyes. Then again, I could be wrong. Amazo steps out of the hull with several deep cuts around its body and oil slightly dripping from its chest cavity. Fox brings his arm up and does a bring it gesture to the bulky android, who responded by charging forward with its thunderous footsteps echoing throughout the area, and once it closed in, it proceeded to attack Fox with a series of left and right hooks that his foe either weaved around or blocked with his blade, and did it all with a grin on his face. If Amazo had any way of expressing emotions, it would be extremely pissed off at the moment and then attempts to backhand the armor-clad warrior, but Fox backflips away and leaps high into the air and lands onto a barge. "Heh, you don't look so big from where I'm standing," he declared, but then his eyes widened when Amazo jumps up and flies into the air towards Fox. Whoa, it can fly. But that's not all it could do. Its eyes glowed red and fired 2 laser beams from its eyes, resulting in Fox dodging the blasts, but ended up with 2 holes in his coat. "And fires lasers. Damn it, Ivo, did you give enough firepower?" He hops to the left as the beams cut through the barge and up into air to avoid 2 more blasts. Amazo was suddenly upon him with its fist reared back and strikes him in the chest hard enough to send him flying back at neck-breaking speeds and crash through several crates and slide through the ground. Fox groaned as he tried to regain his bearing in the pile of wood and sat up, rubbing his head and shake the cobwebs out, only for a wooden crate to fly towards him, and he was forced to roll to the left as it shattered against the truck it hit. He sprung back to his feet and cut down 2 more, and Amazo came zipping down and landing hard on the ground, firing another round of beams that Fox deflects, and this time redirects the blasts back at Amazo's eyes, causing it to stagger back as its eyes were permanently damaged. Fox took this opportunity leap towards Amazo with his blade positioned back and swings forward. Sling. The head came flying off its shoulder and into the air, while Fox landed back with Kushinada extended outwards. He stands back up and slowly sheathes his blade, and with a click, the body falls like a rock, and he catches the head in his hand. Music ends. All this trouble over a head, he mumbled while pulling a kunai from his sleeve and flicks it northeast of his direction. A gasp was heard, and a blur leaps out of the shadows and lands in front of him, and it happened to be a female with a young woman with a slender, but fit build. She has thick black hair and gray eyes, as well as olive-colored skin, due to her heritage being Asian. Her outfit consists of a dark green colored kimono with shreds and rips along it and tied around her waist, where its length reaches just above her knees, and wore a black bodysuit under it, with black knee-length boots that seemed to designed as ninja footwear. Completing her outfit was a white mask, resembling a cat's head with red stripes and a wide grin, in relationship to the Cheshire Cat. "And speaking of trouble, who might you be?" he questioned as the assassin stood up on her feet. "The name's Cheshire and I'm here for that head," she answered. Which head?" he questioned, getting a slight chuckle from the assassin. "Cute, but I'm here for that android's head. I have clients that are interested in the data it contains and want to exploit it, so we can do this the easy or the hard way." She drew one of her sei and pointed it at him. Fox pondered on this for a bit before putting the head into his coat, but secretly put it into a storage seal to keep it from being damaged. "Bring it," he challenged, and Cheshire responded by throwing a kunai directly at his face, but he caught it in between his finger. Cheshire then dashes at him and thrusts her weapon forward, which Fox manages to dodge and blocks a knee strike to his chest. She pivots her foot and twists her body around to deliver a spin kick to his head, but he ducks and flips over her form with no trouble and lands back onto the ground. "Nice combination," he complimented before pulling out his sheathed sword off his belt, "but you can do better than that." Cheshire narrowed her eyes at his mocking expression and decided to wipe that look off his face, so she sheathed her sai and drew 2 collapsible katana from the back of her belt. "You're right, I can," she declared, getting into a dual sword stance while Fox threw off his coat. "Nice face, by the way." Fox smirks at the compliment and twirls his sheathed weapon a few times. "Thanks, maybe I'll see yours in exchange," he teased, and knew for some odd reason she was smiling slyly behind her mask. "Only if you can remove this mask from my face," she replied back before she makes the first move by twirling her blades in a fluid but quick fashion in order to catch him off guard, but she notices the focused look in his deep blue eyes and knew this was going to be an interesting fight. The duel started with her swinging her blade simultaneously in perfect sync while her foe blocked each strike with the sheath. Each time she pressed on with the attack, he only took a few steps back and stopped in place to block or weave around her blades. She drew his blades back and attempts an X-lash with both blades, but he manages to block them both and stand his ground. "Not bad, you're well taught in the art of swordsmanship," Fox complimented with a smile of approval, but then it changes to one of seriousness, "but your technique lacks something." He pushes the sheath upwards, breaking her stance, spins around and strikes her right in the torso with the tip of the sheath. Cheshire gasps from the blunt force that entered into her stomach and made her skid back. She grits her teeth and glares back at the blonde swordsman who still kept his weapon undrawn. Once she recovered, she dashes at him again and engages him in combat. "This can't be right," she swings at his head, yet he blocks it before bringing it back and thrusts the second blade towards his chest, but he knocks it away with a lightning quick kick. "We're fighting on even terms, yet he hasn't drawn his blade once. If this is the best you've got, you better leave, missy, as I don't have time to play with you for long," Fox stated, and Cheshire responds by crouching down slightly with her remaining blade drawn back. He sighs and shakes his head before strapping Kushinada back in the loop and drawing it. "Fine, I'll humor you and show you the difference in our level of skill. And guard." He dashes towards her and thrusts his blade forward, forcing Cheshire to avoid the tip of the crimson oak katana that lightly grazed the side of her mask and made her jump back, but Fox wasn't having it. He swung his blade in an arch that clashed with her blade, but the force behind it came close to making her lose her balance, and she was now put on the defense due to the series of slashes and thrusts he unleashed. She got a few close calls and getting nicked by the sharp edge of her foe's sword. She pushed up against a wall and curses to herself and has to tuck and roll in order to not get cut in half as the blade sliced through the wall with no form of resistance. Cheshire got back up, panting with her sword up, ready to face him again, only for Fox to sheath his weapon and casually walk back to his coat and pick it up. "Where do you think you're going?" she questioned. Fox looks over his shoulder with a bored expression on his face, which upset her at the fact that he seemed to look down on her like she wasn't even a decent challenge. "I have no need to answer a pawn." was all he said and simply walked off, infuriating the young woman who brought her sword up and threw it at him with all her strength at the back of his head. Fox simply deflects it with his armored forearm. Some people never learn. He mutters before vanishing and appearing before Cheshire with his blade raised over his head and brought it down. Cheshire's instinct screamed at her to jump away, which she did, while Kushina slammed into the ground hard enough to actually leave a wicked slash on the concrete. "You missed," she says, only for the blonde to smirk at her. Cheshire wondered why he was smiling until she felt a breeze hit her body and an article of clothing dropped. A thin line split her mask in two and the face wear fell in two pieces to the floor, revealing her shocked face. "How did you?" She wondered until another breeze hit her bare skin and paused. "Wait, bare skin?" Cheshire looked down to see her sash holding her kimono clothes was cut in two and on the floor, revealing a two-piece bodysuit she wore that hugged her figure like a second skin against her C-cupped breasts, flat yet toned stomach, curved hips, and nice firm ass that wasn't too big or small. "Ah." She covered herself with her arms, blushing in embarrassment, and glared at Fox with all the anger she could muster, while he chuckles at her. "Consider that little stunt I pulled a lesson free of charge," Fox says to the angry assassin while sheathing his blade. "If I ever see you again, I'll kill you," Cheshire said in a deadly tone before pulling a smoke bomb out and throwing it to the ground, releasing a smokescreen. Once it cleared, she was out of sight. "And I look forward to it, Nico-chan," he says while gathering his coat and vanishes from the sight in a flash of yellow, completing his objective for Ivo. The genius in cybernetics and robotics was in process of scanning Naruto's cybernetic body for any malfunctions or obscurities. The screen in front of his was giving him an outline of the blonde's body and diagnosing the functions of the limbs and organs that had to be replaced. Naruto was strapped to an oval-like device clad in a pair of black boxers and hovering over the floor while being scanned. Everything seems to be in order. There are no negative side effects, with the cybernetic parts and organic parts Ivo inspected with keen eyes. The nanomachines are doing an excellent job keeping them in line. With that, he pressed a blue button and the machine whirred and rotated so that Naruto was facing upwards and gently placed itself on the ground. The shackles unlock and he places his feet on the ground. His body may appear human, but the difference was the outlines around certain parts of his body, like Raiden's was before the end of Metal Gear Solid 4, replacing his lost limbs with cybernetic one, but with the help of his vast amount of chakra, they were able to function like he never lost them. "So tell me, Doc, how long will it take you to complete this serum of yours?" Naruto questioned as he was handed a pair of black pants and a sleeveless shirt by one of the man's assistants. Can't wait to be all flesh and bone again, lad," Ivo questioned humorously and got a chuckle from the blonde. "I can hold out. Why did you need anything else for my surgery?" Naruto asked. "The only thing I really need is the data that contains the info on restoring lost tissue, and the only corporation that holds that data is Star Labs. I could make a request to the director to let me borrow some of the data since it's a secret project the medical sector of the company is working on and the security's extremely heavy," Ivo answered. "The only downside is that it hasn't been tested on a human and we don't want to risk any casualties." "Then I'll do it," Naruto answered, surprising Ivo at the risk he wanted to take. "Are you sure, lad?" Ivo questioned. "If this idea fails, you could end up worse than you were when I found you in Dear Satsuki. You could more than likely die if this operation fails." He finished, expressing a serious look on his face. "I'm positive," Naruto answered, sporting a calm and serious expression. "If I could survive from an explosion that took nearly half of my body, I'll survive this procedure. I've stared death in the face since I knew how to walk and talk and gave it a good kick in the ass during those times it wanted to claim me. Another near-death experience won't change my mind." Ivo couldn't help but respect the youngster due to most people fearing death, but then again, not everyone is a super ninja who fought off beings that would give the heroes of this world a run for their money. "I think I'll give Garrison a call on this, after all he does owe you from that assassination attempt by Deadshot." Naruto chuckled as he remembered that encounter with the world's best sharpshooter, but ended up losing his shooting arm and his dignity. He would have killed the man, but thought losing a limb is punishment enough before Deadshot was sent off to Belle Reve. Training room. Satsuki was panting lightly as she held her Chikudo in her right hand, garbed in her training outfit that consisted of a dark blue skin-tight training shirt that exposed her toned midriff and wore a pair of hip-hugging biker shorts that left little to the imagination and a pair of black training shoes. She got into her stance and proceeded to perform the sword technique that was based off of the movements of a snake she learned as Orochimaru's disciple. Combined with her flexibility and agility made Satsuki extremely formidable against anyone she came across, even if that person was stronger or faster than her, plus her Sharingan gave her a major edge in terms, but she also learned how to not rely on it all the time. After performing a series of horizontal and vertical slashes, she flips sideways and performs a spin kick with her left leg and flips backwards, rising a good 10 feet into the air before landing back down in a crouching position. Clapping echoed in the training room, so she stood back up and smiled as Naruto walked into the room with a smile of approval at her performance. "Every time I see you dance I just can't help but admire your finesse and beauty, Satsuki-chan." Naruto replied with a towel in hand and tosses it to her. She rolls her eyes at the compliment since she's heard the remark every time she works out. "Wish I could say the same for you, baka." Satsuki remarks, getting a mock-hurt expression from her boyfriend. "Oh Haim, you wound me," he said, clutching his heart in a dramatic fashion but chuckles at her. "Anyway, how did your test go?" "It went well actually, everything's functioning well so I have nothing to worry about at the moment," he answered, flexing his cybernetic right arm. Satsuki approached him and placed her hands around the limb, rubbing it in an affectionate manner. Naruto noticed a hint of sadness in her eyes as she gazed at his replaced arm, so he reached out and placed his hand against the side of her face, and Satsuki tilted her head on his palm. "Everything's gonna be fine, Satsuki-chan. I don't regret what I did back when that team tried to pull the kamikaze move on us," he assured her before wrapping his arms around her frame and pulling her closer to his body. Satsuki sighs and rests her head on his chest, hearing his heartbeat echo in her ear. "You always say that," she muttered and receives a kiss on the forehead by him. "I know, but it always does in the end, right?" Satsuki nods before looking up at him, Onyx meeting cerulean. Kami, she just loved looking into his eyes as they held such warmth and compassion despite everything they've been through. She was about to say something until Ivo's voice echoed from the loudspeaker for her and Naruto to come to his lab. "Well, we can't let the good doctor wait now, can we?" Satsuki shook her head and headed over to the bench to grab her sweat jacket and puts it on before joining up with Naruto. The cave. It's been 2 weeks since Supergirl, as Robin called her, joined up with the young heroes and lived in the former base of the Justice League when they started out, and needless to say, it wasn't bad so to speak, since the place is nicely furnished. The only issue aside from Wally's constant flirting was Superman, mainly because she hasn't seen her donor after the incident from Cadmus, and it upset her to no end, considering she has the same abilities as the Man of Steel. She still needed to learn how to use them properly and was hoping he could help her. She's currently sitting on a couch in the living room watching a television show called NCIS. Don't judge me, this is a badass show. She was garbed in a black long-sleeved shirt that hugged her figure with an S symbol around the middle of her ample chest, with a pair of form-fitting jeans and black boots that gave her the appearance of a female biker, with her hair done up in a high ponytail. In the kitchen, Miss Martian was in the process of making some chocolate chip cookies she picked up from a TV show that involved cooking. Like Supergirl, Miss Martian, or Mgan Morse, was a new member of the covert team, though the difference between her and the female Kryptonian is that she was more bubbly personality-wise and tended to get excited, especially if it came to meeting different people. She walked over to the couch and sat in the opposite side, stirring the cookie dough. "So Supergirl, is there anything interesting on the TV that you like?" she asked in an attempt to make conversation. "No," was the Ravenette's answer as she clicked the channel button to a different show. "Oh, okay." Silence reigned for a few seconds before she spoke up again. "Well, is there anything particular that interests you? Like a good book, a movie, or maybe even a boy perhaps?" Crack. Supergirl's reaction to the last word caused her to accidentally crush the remote in her hand, and the female Martian blinked in surprise at her response. After realizing what she did, Supergirl drops the broken remote and get up. "I'm gonna go in the training room for a bit," she said before walking away, and had Miss Martian noticed she would have realized that the genetically altered clone sported a hint of pink on her face. I hope I didn't embarrass her," Megan wondered as she headed back into the kitchen. "I think a nice batch of cookies will cheer her up." She hummed happily as she used her telekinesis to levitate a cookie tray on the counter and prepared to make the cookies. Ivo's lab. "So tell me, what do you two think of the new and improved Amazo?" Ivo asked his 2 bodyguards, who were wide-eyed, and for a good reason. This Amazo looked more human than it previously did. The cyborg was a 9-foot-tall muscular male with a tan-like complexion and was garbed in what looked like dark orange armor with matching boots and a black bodysuit. The android's hair was styled in a spiky mohawk-like fashion and red with matching brows, and its eyes were forest green. The duo continued to stare at the newly designed android, blinking a couple of times until Naruto rubbed his chin and thought, "Well, it's different from the last design." The blonde answered, tilting his head to the side with a raised brow. Satsuki does the same, except she folds her arms to her chest and tilts her head the opposite direction. "It reminds me of those Japanese anime. This one isn't gonna malfunction like the last one did, is it?" Naruto questioned and got a negative shake of the head from Ivo. "Not this time, lad. I made sure to reprogram its functions and prevent it from being hacked with the extensive use of powerful firewalls and several antiviral programs, and also I included a failsafe password just in case." Ivo assured them not only that, but this model is more efficient than the last one and gave it a new nice set of abilities, minus the replication part of course. Its durability is great enough to withstand a hit from a speeding freight train, and its strength could match the likes of Superman's. It can still fly and even fire lasers from its optical organs. That's nice and all, but can it speak? Naruto questioned. Yes, I can. Amazo replied back in monotone, surprising the blonde hybrid and getting a chuckle from Ivo. Yes, I've installed a voice box into its design and give it a speech pattern so that it can communicate with others, and he is even multilingual. He answered, patting the cyborg on the arm. I have to say he is a further step ahead of the monkey bots I invented. I see. Naruto glances at the stone-faced android before a grin forms on his face. Well, Amazo, it's nice to meet the new and improved you. He brought his hand forward in a gesture to shake his hand, but Amazo simply stares at it and glances back at Naruto. What is this form of gesture? It questioned. It's how people greet another. Naruto replied back to the android. Amazo continued to stare at the hand and Naruto before it brought its hand up and slowly shook hands with the blonde. So what gave you the idea to make Amazo more human-like in terms? My intention for this version is for him to learn about the different aspects of human beings and to see how well he can communicate with us as a fully constructed cyborg. Even though he's an artificial intellect, he has no form of displaying emotions or form of response. Ivo explained. The last one was able to replicate the skills of others by studying them, but by trying to learn too much, caused it to malfunction. Satsuki said with Ivo nodding. But in this one I removed the replicating ability and allowed it to study under its own pace so that it can observe, adapt, and evolve, intellectually of course. Cool, so how will it vote in combat? Naruto wondered only to get smacked in the head by Satsuki. You're not fighting the android Uzumaki. Satsuki chastised. Fine, I won't fight the android, can I spar with him? I'll hold back, I promise. He begged. No. Both Ivo and Satsuki snapped back. Gotham City. Cyanus Industries. What do you mean the last shipment of weapons was destroyed? Roman Cyanus aka Black Mask roared from his desk. To make a description short, I based Roman off the version from Under the Red Hood, glaring angrily at his female assistant, Ms. Lee, while his guards were cringing from the murderous glare. I have spent weeks getting these shipments in, and do you know how much money every single piece of steel cost? A lot, sir. Ms. Lee answered. Yes. A lot. He spat, slamming his fists on the desk. $750,000 down the drain thanks to the damn bat. Boss. What? The guard flinched from the man's response and spoke up. There is a rumor going around about this character who's been attacking and demolishing countless illegal operations, and it's not Batman or his sidekick. This right here made Roman pause and give his hired help a look that said explain. Elaborate. He ordered. Yes, well, this guy from what I've heard is garbed in a biker attire and wears a red helmet, though unlike Batman, he doesn't leave them for the cops, well, not alive that is. The guard explained. Say what? Mask questioned and the second guard nodded. It's true, boss, I even heard he killed a dozen mob enforcers that were guarding one of Falcone's lieutenants and offed him as well. Well, isn't that just dandy, Black Mask muttered, rubbing his temples in frustration before looking up. Listen, I want the word to spread about this nut job and gather any information you can, and if there are any sightings of him, I want him dead. He finished in a tone that stated he meant business, so the goons nodded and left the office to perform their task. Gotham City. Iceberg Lounge. You're not gonna get away with this, Penguin. Detective Bullock shouted, tied up by rope and dangling over what appeared to be a large tank, while the bird-themed villain cackled from his seat, smoking a cigar. Oh really? From where I'm sitting I think I am. The pudgy midget stated as he pulled the cigarette from his lips and releases a puff of smoke as he witnessed the shark fin cutting through the water in a circular fashion. You think you can just waltz into my place without an invitation? I don't think so. You see, lad, I tend to hate having uninvited guests, and if they refuse to leave, I introduce them to Tiny. One of the guards tossed a large chunk of chum into the water and a giant great white's head erupted from the water and snaps it into its jaws. Bullock screams in fright as the shark drags it underwater, leaving the remains and blood floating over the surface. He's what you'd call my personal garbage disposal, getting rid of pests like you or those who fail to meet my standings. Jolly fellow he is and isn't picky about what he eats. Pegan stated as he grinned at the frightened detective. That little snack I gave him won't even fill up his stomach, though judging from your size, he should be good for a good week before being fed again. I just hope you don't give him indigestion. He cackles and orders him to be dropped in. One of the thugs presses a button to the crane and the detective is slowly lowered towards the water where Tiny is waiting for his next meal. Penguin cackles like a madman as he watched Bullock's thrashing form trying to escape the bindings as he was lowered even closer. Suddenly a crash was heard and two of Penguin's goons came flying out of the broken door and crashing into the opposite side of the wall. What the? Penguin wondered as Fox came walking into the room with his hands in his pockets. Who the funk are you? Cobblepot shouted as the crane stopped and placed, leaving Bullock to sigh in relief, while his goons each drew their automatics and aimed at the hooded sword wielder. Put those things away. I don't need you all damaging my merchandise. Greetings Penguin, the name's Fox and I've come here to collect a rock my clients are interested in that you possess. Fox informed the criminal mastermind. Oh? What type? As I have countless rocks in my collection. It's called the Amber June Purdue, a glowing gold-colored gem that one of your goons pilfered from a museum. I would like to have it with no trouble. Fox requested. And if I refuse? Oswald questioned in an amused tone and was on the receiving end of a predatory smile. Then I'm gonna take it from you. He brushes the left side of his coat away and reveals the sheathed form of Kushinada. And I'd really hate to tear up your establishment. Penguin responded by laughing right at the hooded blonde. Take it from me? Let's get one thing straight here Fox, no one steals from me and those who do end up in the shark like this tub of lard is. He pointed his umbrella at the bound officer and points it at Fox. You want my jewel, you have to get through my boys here. Several stepped forward pulling out stun rods and knives. A smile curves up on Fox's lips as he saw the thugs try to be menacing as they slowly approached him. Fox chuckles as he slowly drew his weapon and the crimson blade hummed as red electricity arched around the blade. Okay then, let's dance. Fox declares with a feral grin on his face. But Satsuki. The female Uchiha frowned as she inspected the bodies of the dead drug dealers. They were pierced with kunai that were aimed in vital areas, and not only that, but judging from the blunt trauma force in several spots they too were fatal areas to hit on the human body. Not only that but their throats were slit open, but not in a reckless way because the thin cut lining the throat was delivered swiftly. She sighs and pulls her mask back up, stepping backwards and into the shadows as the sirens of a police car echoed through the streets. Bruglab. Hey man, didn't ya hear? Hear what? Several drug dealers got taken out by some guy wearing a red helmet. Think it was one of Batman's sidekicks? Nah, couldn't be, the Bat and his groupies don't kill, you know that. You never know man, with all these costumed wearing freaks on the loose one could snap. TCH, you worry to mew. Blam. Blood and brain matter flew out of the back of the thug's skull from a bullet and he hit the ground like a rock. Holy shy. Blam. The other goon met the same fate as he got a bullet to the brain. A figure came walking out of the shadows of the building and from the physique was male. He was garbed in a biker-like outfit with what looked like a black utility belt. 2 gun holsters were strapped around his chest with a pair of .45 automatics on each side and the headgear he wore consisted of a blood-red customized motorcycle helmet. Yes people, this is the Red Hood from under the Red Hood. I thought there would be more of you. Red Hood states as he twirled his handgun before holstering it. The light suddenly snapped on and around the catwalk where over a dozen men armed with Axer M14 automatic rifles aimed at him with the lasers aimed at every part of his body. I stand corrected. He muttered before diving behind a truck as gunfire went off and hit the cargo hold of the truck. Outside Satsuki heard the sound of gunfire echoing in a warehouse nearby and decided to go check it out. Inside, Red Hood fired stayed as low as he could to avoid the bullets flying through air. I really should learn to look before I leap. He mutters as he reached into his utility belt and pulls out a frag grenade. He pulls the clips and chucks it over the gunfire. Grenade. One of the shooters yells as the bomb sails into the air and lands onto the catwalk, but due to the gunfire they couldn't hear him and the grenade explodes, sending the goons flying in different direction and hit the hard ground, though some were killed in the explosion. The rest were pretty banged up but still functioning. They picked up their weapons and started to slowly search for their target. Red on the other hand was hiding behind some crates with his gun locked and loaded and slowly creeping around. The one goon was scanning the area, unaware that he was getting close to Red Hood. Once he stopped in front of a large crate, a sharp pain entered his back and before he could scream, a hand wrapped around his mouth and he was pulled into the shadows. Several others met the same fate as they were either grabbed into the shadows or knocked out. The last remaining goon trembled in fear with his gun rattling due to the fact that none of others were around the area. Oh god, I don't want to die. He whimpered out only to hear a clicking sound and the end of a handgun pressed against the back of his head, causing him to freeze up. Then you shouldn't be working for scum like Black Mask. Red Hood whispered as he slowly squeezed the trigger. Please man, don't do this, I'm only in this to feed my wife and kid that's on the way. I missed the part where that's my problem, say goodnight scum. Just as he squeezed the trigger, a shuriken whizzed through the air and knocked the gun out of his hand. Whoa, what the? He didn't get to finish due to being struck in the back of his neck and falling to the ground unconscious. Satsuki looked down at him and then back at the trembling goon. Leave. Was all she said. He didn't need to be told twice as he scrambled to his feet and took off, leaving the female Uchiha with the knocked out Vigilante. She hoists him over her shoulder and shunshions away with him to a different spot. Ice lounge. Bullock had seen a lot of crazy things in his life. He's seen a cannibalistic human-croc hybrid, an insane clown, a zombie on steroids, and even a deranged half-faced lawyer, and now he was witnessing a hooded figure going samurai on a bunch of goons wielding state-of-the-art weapons, cutting them down left and right, and even deflecting bullets. Gordon's right, I need a vacation. He mumbled as he watched Fox cut one guy in half down the middle, letting the two pieces fall to the floor. Or a psychiatrist. Fox flicks the blood off his blade and turns his attention to the last goon, who was shakily aiming his AK-47 at the blonde. He smiles and calmly walks over to the guy who freaks out and starts firing. Crimson blurs were deflecting the bullets faster than the naked eye could see, and the shocking part was that Fox wasn't even moving his weapon. His weapon clicked, meaning he was out of ammo, so he looked up to see Fox's hooded face looking at him impassively, so he dropped the automatic and turned around to run into the wall. Fox chuckles as the unconscious man slid down the wall and shrugs before heading back to the trembling midget, twirling his blade in a nonchalant fashion. The bird-themed villain was slowly reaching for his customized umbrella that was under his desk, only to freeze when the tip of Kushinada was aimed a few inches near his throat. "You don't want to do that," Fox advised, sporting his feral grin. "Now would you be so kind as to hand over the jewel, or do I need to cut you down to size?" Cobblepot gulped and relented, turning his seat to his vault and opens it, pulling a nice size glowing diamond and turning around. "Here, take it." He placed it on the desk while Fox picks it up to examine it before pocketing it. "A pleasure doing business with you, though I'd recommend improving your security. You can only teach street thugs so much since their IQ is on par with that of a third grader," he advised before heading to the exit, where a stunned Bullock watched him leave, but not before he gave the detective a grin and tossed him a pair of cuffs. "Later, and try to lay off the donuts." After leaving the Iceberg Lounge, Naruto stood on top of a building inspecting the gem some more with his hood down. I wonder why those chuckleheads want this rock so bad. Doesn't look so special to me." He pondered until he heard a scream. He glances at a closed supermarket to see a store owner run out yelling about a monster cat that, from the looks of his torn clothing and cuts, was attacked. Naruto rubbed his chin in thought, thinking about if he should check it out, and shrugs. "Might as well, the bosses didn't exactly give me a deadline when to bring them the gem." With that, he hopped off the edge and descended downwards, landing in a crouch and heading towards the broken-in market. He trekked through the broken glass as he entered the barley-lit store, looking for the one who broke in, noticing that the registers were intact. So the assailant isn't interested in the money then. That's a first. He then hears something crash. He sticks to the shadows and makes his way to the shifting noise until he comes across the dairy aisle, where a shadowed figure was pulling out a fresh gallon of milk. The light from inside the slide door revealed what appeared to be a she-cat. Judging from her height, she was 5 to 7 with a lean build and curved figure. Her waist-length hair was a desert blonde color with spots. The front shorter section of hair has been brought forward, creating a bangs effect around her somewhat long face. She had dark amber eyes with a cat-like slit in them, and around her eyes were reddish-brown pigments that were lined perfectly with her vanilla-colored face, along with a pair of cat-like ears behind her bangs. Her outfit consisted of a dark brown two-piece consisting of a tank top that showed off her flat-toned stomach and curves, as well as a nice view of her ample D-cup breasts that showed some cleavage, while her dark brown shorts stopped above her knees, showing her nicely toned legs and rear, but wore no form of footwear. Sprouting behind her was a cheetah-like tail that waged back and forth. So that you all know, I based Cheetah's appearance off of Chitara's form from the 2011 Thundercat series. She tossed away the empty carton and grabs another out, ripping the cap off and proceeding to drink the contents. Ahem. The she-cat paused as she heard the cough and turns her head to see Naruto sporting an amused expression while dangling the empty carton from his index finger. "A little late for a midnight snack, don't you think, Nico?" The blonde questioned, only to tilt his head as the other carton came flying at his head. The she-cat snarls and leaps at him, unsheathing her claws in order to cut him up like she did the owner, but Naruto simply ducks as she bypassed him and landed on all fours. She spun around, hissing at him and revealing a pair of canines. This action only made Naruto raise a brow and chuckle at her. "Well, don't you look adorable like that?" She was about to attack him once again, only to hear sirens, so she glares at Naruto, picks up her bag of food, and runs away to the entrance. Naruto chuckles once again and heads out of the building and leaps upwards on the roof right when the police cars stop in front of the store. The female hybrid managed to scale the roof of an abandoned complex and placed her bag of food down, letting out a sigh of relief. She shuffles through the bag and pulls out a raw T-bone steak, licking her lips, and proceeds to feast on the slab of meat. "You know eating raw meat is bad for you." Her eyes widened as she heard the same voice from the store and sets her gaze onto Naruto, who stood before her with his arms in his pockets, sporting an amused expression as the T-bone remained in her mouth. "You again?" She hissed and stood up, dropping the steak with her claws ready and becoming more feral. Naruto, however, just stood there with his head tilted. Why so hostile, Nico-chan? I'm not here to fight, I just want to talk. He assured the hybrid. And why should believe you? For all I know you were probably hired to hunt me down like those other mercenaries. She snarled. If I was here to kill you, I would have done so at the supermarket, Naruto stated with a serious expression before his gaze softens. And why would I kill someone as adorable as you? That right there put her off for a moment, but she still didn't look convinced. Still don't trust me? Very well. He opens his jacket, revealing Kushinada and making her tense until he unclips it, sets it down, and lightly kicks it away, muttering a sorry Harem before tossing his coat aside as well. What are you doing? She questioned. Proving my honesty. Naruto answered with his arms out. As you can see, I have no other weapons on me aside from my sword. She still looks skeptical about him, but glances at him and his weapon before settling her stance, but keeps her eyes on him when he sits down on the floor cross-legged. She stares at him for a while before taking a step towards him, but in a slow and cautious manner. Once she was a few feet away from him, she slowly sat down with her gaze focused on him, much to the amusement of Naruto. There, that wasn't so hard now, was it? Shut up. She growled only for him to chuckle at her response. So aren't you gonna say anything about my appearance? What about it? I did mention that you looked adorable, catgirl. Naruto replied back. Her brow twitched at the nickname and huffed, folding her arms under her chest. That's not my name, it's Barbara Minerva or my alias Cheetah. She answered. Naruto Uzumaki. The blonde ninja said, so did you always look like a she-cat? No, I was once a normal person just like any other until I was backstabbed and turned into this monster by Cadmus. She looked at her clawed hands with a scowl marred on her face. Naruto, however, raised a brow at this. Cadmus, huh? Did you happen to know a guy by the name of Desmond? His answer was her growling in an animalistic manner and clench her fists. He's the one responsible for my change. If I ever see that bastard again, I'll rip his head off. She swore. Hate to break it to you, Nico-chan, but Desmond's dead. Her eyes widened in disbelief and looked back at him. What? When? A few months back I was a temporary keeper of security, but during my stay there, Desmond annoyed the hell out me with his high and mighty attitude, so I took my sword out and gutted him like a fish. Naruto answered, shocking the hybrid. So you killed him? Naruto nodded and she chuckled darkly. Death's too good for him, but hey, the world will be a better place without him. I just wish I was there to see the life leave his eyes when you gutted him. She remained silent for a few seconds before speaking up. So my form doesn't freak you out? Once again Naruto raised a brow as he gets a good look at her form and shrugs. Nah, not really, so you're a crossbreed between a cheetah and a human. Honestly, I think your form looks cute. A hint of pink appeared on her face. Most of my body has been replaced by cybernetic parts by a man who saved my life, who's helping me get my original body back. Maybe he could help you as well. Do you think he can help me? She wondered with hope in her eyes from the prospects of being human again. I don't think I know. Cheetah pondered on the offer. She was tired of having to creep through alleyways and having to break into supermarkets to get food or sleeping in outdated apartments or abandoned subways. I'll take this offer, but if this is a trick, she let the threat hang as she turned feral for a bit and her claws lengthened. I give you my word, we will find a way to get you back to normal, Barbara-san. He assured her before getting up and offering her his hand. She took it and he pulled her on her feet and goes to retrieve his coat and sword while Cheetah grabs a brown overcoat and places it over her form and they leave out of the old complex. Meanwhile, the red-helmeted vigilante groaned as he regained his vision and found himself in a large warehouse that seemed to have seen better days. He tries to get up but finds himself being bound tightly in rope and sees his gear laid against the opposite side of the wall. Where the hell am I? He wondered before he heard footsteps and turned his head to see a masked raven-haired Kunoichi approach him. Hi, was all he said while a smile crept up on her face, but his wasn't a happy smile. It's you're screwed unless you listen to me smile, and she crouched down. Hello. Satsuki said back before forming into her Sharingan. Let's talk. So let me get this straight, Satsuki started as she sat in front of the bound vigilante with her legs crossed. You were a former protege of Batman, killed by the Joker, revived by Ra's al Ghul's Lazarus Pit, and grew slightly insane from the pool's properties, and became a vigilante that kills, correct? Red Hood nodded as he leaned against the wall. Yep, now would it be too much trouble to untie me? This is very uncomfortable. He requested. Satsuki pondered on this and narrowed her eyes at him. Are you going to escape? Because if you are, I'm gonna collect that bounty Blask Mask has on your head and bring it to him personally. She threatened in a calm yet deadly tone. Cross my heart, hope to die. He answered before Satsuki pulls a kunai out of her pouch and cuts him out of the bindings, allowing him to rub the numbness out of his arms. Any chance of me getting my gear back? Satsuki answered by pointing her kunai at his throat. I guess that's a no, right? The Ravenet smirks and put the blade away. You're learning fast, by the way I'm Satsuki Uchiha. She introduced. Jason Todd. He pulls the helmet off, revealing the face of a young man about 18 years old with short black hair, with 2 short bangs in front, and a red domino mask. So what brings you to these parts of Gotham? Nothing much. My partner is retrieving a rock from the Iceberg Lounge. The moment she said that his eyes widened. Iceberg Lounge? That's Penguin's spot. Your partner must very brave or have a death wish to steal from him. He's just retrieving it for our clients. We have no interests in trinkets since money isn't a problem for us and we're just doing this ordeal temporarily. She answered. Freelancers go figure, though you don't look like the type to knock off someone for a quick buck. Jason commented, getting a smirk from her. So when should your partner be here? His answer was the doors being kicked off the hinges and sliding towards their feet. Right now. She said before turning her gaze at Naruto, who looked like he was ready to slice someone to ribbons. Let me guess, our clients? Satsuki asked and got a nod from him, while Cheetah entered into the room with her overcoat hiding most of her form. So who's the tag-along? Naruto clanked back at Cheetah and gave her a nod, resulting in her pulling her hood down. I'm Barbara Minerva, but I also go by Cheetah. She answered. Who's he? Jason Todd also goes by Red Hood, vigilante like the Dark Knight, but kills. Satsuki answered while Jason kept staring at Cheetah. Whoa. Was all Jason could say as he saw the catgirl hybrid with wide eyes as Cheetah glanced back at him. Problem? She questioned in an annoyed tone while tossing her coat aside. Huh? No, just surprised to see catgirl, though you're a better sight to see than Killer Croc. Jason answered as she raised a brow at him. Trust me, there's nothing on this planet that can freak me out or I haven't seen yet. Thanks, I guess, she said. So where do we go from here? Naruto pondered on this, rubbing his chin in though before smiling. Why not start our own group? Satsuki rolled her eyes, mumbling something about I should have known. Pass, I work alone. Jason stated as he leaned against the wall with his arms folded. Just hear me out first, we could be a group of freelancers, a group who is not afraid to cross the line against the criminal organizations that plague this world. Now Jason was interested. You mean be the opposite of the Justice League? Naruto nodded at his answer. Okay, you've piqued my interest, we'll basically be getting our hands dirty, then correct? Pretty much, yes, but first I have to end this temporary alliance I have with the light. Naruto answered. Who? Jason asked. An organization consisting of a group of supervillains who think their ways are for the good of the earth. Satsuki explained. That right made Jason weary. Wait, you're working for the bad guys? He questioned, sporting an angry glare. Not by choice, buddy, so relax, we're doing this to keep the man who saved my life out of their clutches, but once this deal is over, it's gonna be open season on those fools. Naruto answered. Jason frowned for a bit before nodding and looks back at Cheetah. And what's your issue with them? I was experimented on when they wanted to create an army of hybrids, I didn't always look like this. Cheetah flexed her hand and her nails lengthened into claws. Payback, I get ya. Jason pondered on this for a bit before shrugging. What the hell. This might be fun, I'm in. Satsuki smirks and tosses him his gear while Cheetah nods in agreement. Naruto grins and claps his hands together. Then it's settled, we've got ourselves a group. So who's gonna explain the extras to Ivo? Satsuki asked Naruto. He remained silent for a moment before smiling in a sheepish manner. I'm still working on that. He answered, and Satsuki palmed her face in annoyance, muttering about idiotic blondes not thinking before acting. Star City docks. Fox yawned in boredom as he watched Brick's thugs unload the crate of illegal weapons from a barge, while Red Hood was inspecting the laser guns for any defects. I don't see why you're so keen in using guns so much, Hood. The hooded biker twirled the firearm a few times and practiced taking aim with it. Do we really have to go through the whole guns and blades ordeal, boss? Guns are more effective in my opinion and can be used in any range. He explained. Yeah, but they don't have the efficiency of a blade though. Fox replied back as he drew Kushinada and gazed at the modified blade. Blades can deliver clean and thorough strikes, and they don't leave messes. Plus they're silent and not clunky like a gun is. But they lack range and are better used in close combat, and considering the fact that you are a master swordsman and can basically cut down anything from a distance with just air pressure alone, Fox snorted and twirls his blade a few times. Anyone can use a gun, but it takes discipline to use a blade properly, Red. He replied back. You thinking about keeping a couple of those? Maybe, they look like they could do some major damage. Heck, I might keep a crate of these babies in case I need to replace any that I lose or get destroyed. You never know. Hey. Hands off the merchandise. Brick shouted as he approached the two. Your bosses want these weapons in tip-top shape and I don't want you screwing around with them, you dig? How's about you keep an eye on your thugs or I'll test this puppy on you to see how effective it is. Red threatened as he pointed the high-tech blaster at the clay-skinned metahuman. Rick on the other hand narrowed his eyes at the Vigilante and smirked. Go ahead then, I won't feel a thing. Rick challenged only for a flash of red to graze his cheek surprising him and feeling some blood trickle down the cut. Did you feel that? Fox asked the stunned man as he inspected the crimson-colored blade. Your durable skin isn't so durable against Kushinada, also stop your bitching. He warned. Rick gulped and turned his back to them while wiping the blood off his cheek with a handkerchief. Come on boss, I wanted to test this out. Red states and got a chuckle from the blonde. Patience my biker-themed friend, you get your shoddy assured his partner as he sheathes his blade, only to pause for bit and grin sooner than you think. As soon as he said that an arrow hit the surface of a crate, one of the thugs were carrying and released a green smog. Rick gritted his teeth as the weapons scattered through the ground and kicked up one of them in order to aim at Speedy, who was atop the large cranes. Isn't that Speedy? Red Hood asked Fox, who nodded with his arms folded. He's scowling like a brooder. That comment got the sword wielder chuckle at the jab. The big red man was certainly not pleased by the sight. You again, I'm started to get insulted. Green arrows not stopping my operations personally. He fires an explosive blasts that the acrobatic red-clad boy avoided, performing several acrobatic feats until he managed to get some distance in order to jump and fire an arrow right into the cannon's muzzle, which forced the whole gun to explode in Brick's hand and destroyed his suit. Fortunately his pants were still on, but that didn't stop his anger at losing his expensive Italian suit. Damn, what a waste of a good suit, it looked real expensive. Fox stated. Do you know what I paid for a suit in my size? The villain growled, making the blonde merc chuckle before he and Hood took that as their cue. They watched new arrivals take down the other goons, Kid Flash, Robin and Aqualid. An infuriated Brick rips big chunks of concrete from the floor and throws a couple at the former sidekicks. Speedy fired more explosive arrows with Aqualid helping him with the big pieces of rock the large man threw by slicing them in half with his water bearers until Speedy finished it all with highly condensed foam, made especially to capture super strong criminals like Brick. Shouldn't we stop them, boss? Red Hood asked as he glared at the bird-themed boy wonder as he knocked out a thug with a flying kick which Fox took notice of. In a bit, how much cargo is loaded in the truck? About 15 cases. Red answered, getting a nod of approval from Fox. Should we head out before the heroes decide to destroy the shipment? Fox suddenly appeared beside the Vigilante and deflects an arrow that came close to hitting him. Mind your surroundings, Hood. He advised as the archer took aim at the two. So where's your Robin Hood-themed partner Little John? Speedy scowled at the jab while the others appear beside their fellow sidekick. Oh great, it's the samurai guy. Kid Flash complained as he still remembered the beating he handed them back in Cadmus. Stay alert, Speedy, Aqualid warned. He was able to take me, Robin, and Kid Flash down with little difficulty. Said arrow user simply scoffed. Maybe you four, but I'm in a whole different league. Speedy declared. Hood however rolled his eyes at the statement. Wow, arrogant much. Hey boss, can I take this guy? Someone needs to knock him off his high horse. Heh, be my guest, but don't forget we're on a schedule, so don't play around. Fox advised. Red nodded before tossing the laser gun aside and pulls out a pair of customized Colt .45 automatic pistols, picture ebony and ivory from the Devil May Cry games series, from his gun holsters. Let's see which is faster, your arrows or my bullet, sidekick. Speedy fires a trick arrow, but Hood fires one round, resulting in a small explosion. Red Hood leaps onto a metal crate and fires off several shots, making Speedy leap downwards into the lower crates for cover. As the duo had their fight, the other sidekicks were about to assist their comrade only for Fox to land in front them with his trusty blade in his right hand, smirking. Sorry, no interfering allowed, kiddies, say isn't past your bedtimes. Do your mentors know you gallivant at this time of night? Robin responds by chucking several birdarangs at Fox, who moves to the left before evading a water whip by Aqualid. Kid Flash sprints at him in order to deliver a super speed punch to the guy's head. Sensing the attack, Fox manages to crouch down and sweep kick the speedster off his feet, sending him flying and crashing into a crate. He should really learn to control that speed. Fox commented as he stood back up and shouldered Kushinada. Aqualid shifted his water bearers into blade mode before dashing at the hooded blonde and engages in a sword fight with him. On the other side, gunshots and explosions echoed throughout the area. Red Hood was covering behind a crate, reloading a clip back into his gun. I'll say this much, the guy's pretty decent. Jason mutters as he reaches into his pouch and pulls out 2 smoke grenades. He pulls the clips and tosses them upwards into the air, resulting in them exploding and releasing a smokescreen around the area. Speedy curses as his sight was disabled by the smog but kept his trusty bow and arrow ready. He took a few steps back in order to get any glimpse of a shadow from the smoke but got nothing. "RRR, show yourself, Koa Arg." He was struck in the back by a flying kick and sent crashing into the ground while Red Hood landed before him. "I'm no coward, archer boy." Speedy sprung back up with his bow in hand and reaches for another trick arrow, only to dodges to the left as a kick was nearly sent across his skull and swings his bow at the biker-clad vigilante like a makeshift sword, but Hood ducks and pulls out a knife. Roy swings at him again, but Jason sidesteps, shifts his blade into a reversed position and swings upwards, cutting the bowstring in half. Speedy curses and ducks as his foe attempts to backhand him with his forearm and hits him in the side with the bow. Hood grunts and kicks the bow out of his quarry's hands before swinging the knife downwards across his chest, but Roy moves back and chops the knife out of Hood's hand before grabbing him by the shoulders and delivering several knee strikes to his torso. Jason stops the 8-1 and gives him a jab to the chest, and Spartan kicks him away, making him stumble back. Roy reaches for an arrow only to freeze as he saw his foe holding his quiver full of trick arrows in a taunting manner before tossing it aside. "Let's see how you do without your little bow and arrows." Red challenges as he cracked his knuckles. Speedy was berating himself. While he learned hand-to-hand combat under his mentor, he wasn't as advanced due to fighting more at long and mid-range and got into a fighting stance. Come on. Robin was unleashing a combination of punches and kicks at the armor-clad blonde, who either blocked them with his left arm or weaved around them, holding his sword in a reversed form. Robin attempts to hit him with a flying kick, only for Fox to spin, avoiding his flying form, and send reverse heel kick to the boy's back, causing Robin to stumble and groan from the pain. The Qualid lets out a battle cry as he leapt at his opponent with his bearers taking the form of a pair of warhammers and brought them down. Fox leaps to the right as they came down hard on the ground, causing cracks to form until the teenage Atlantean willed the water bearer in his right hand to form into a shield as Fox's foot connects and the force behind it. Naruto chuckles in amusement as the dark-skinned teen skidded back a little from the impact but kept his ground. Someone's been improving their technique. He praised only to get struck in the face by a yellow blur aka Kid Flash, who did a U-turn and rushes at his foe again. Can't say the same for your yellow-clad friend though. He plants his blade into the ground and uses his enhanced reflexes to spin and catch the speedster by the face before tossing him over his shoulder. As a fellow speedster I'm frankly disappointed. He pauses as he hears Robin's cackle echo through the area. He picks up Kushinada and once again deflects a volley of shuriken by rotating his blade in a funnel-like fashion and flings them back into the shadows, resulting in a few small explosions. Robin leapt out from the opposite side and performs an aerial kick, but Fox grabs his ankle and tosses him backwards. As soon as he turned his head, a water-shaped mace struck him in the chest, causing him to stumble a bit before ducking when another one sailed over his head. A Qualid retracted his extended weapons and swung them forward in a crisscrossed fashion. Fox get into a Badajutsu stance as the water-themed weapons got closer and drew Kushinada so fast, a red streak cut through the water weapons like a hot knife through butter. The Qualid gets little time to react as Fox hits him with a fast shoulder tackle and slams into a metal crate, leaving a nice-sized dent in it. The hooded blonde then checks his watch and sighs. "Sorry fellas, playtime's over." With that he brought his index finger and thumb up to his mouth and lets out a sharp whistle. With Red Hood. The gun wielder smirks as he delivered a vicious right hook to Speedy's jaw. The archer snarls as blood drips down his busted lips and lunges at his foe with his fist beat back and performs a 1-2 jab that Red Hood blocks with his forearms before throwing a jab at the archer's torso. Roy moves to the left and hits Red with a mid-kick to the back. Red complained as he stumbled a bit and glares back at Roy, but under his helmet he was actually smiling. He was about to attack him again, only to hear the sharp whistle and sigh. "Well, it's been fun, Speedy, you're a little rough around the edges in hand-to-hand combat, but you've got a long way to go before you can match me." He pulls a flash grenade out and throws it to the ground, releasing a bright flash that forced Roy to cover his eyes from the bright light. When it cleared and got his sight back, he growls due to his foe being gone and winces from the pain he was feeling from fighting the guy head-on, knowing he probably got a few bruised ribs from those kicks. The trio regrouped as their opponent leapt on top of the truck's cargo hold with Red Hood landing beside him. "What should we do about Brick?" Jason asked due to the man still being restrained by the foam. "Leave him, he's of no concern to us, we have what we came for," Fox informed the vigilante. "You're driving by the way." The anti-hero sputters as his boss hops down to the passenger side and grumbles a bit before getting into the driver's side of the truck, and the trio left the docks with their cargo in hand. "We have to stop them," Kid Flash says and was about to speed after them only for a Qualid to plant a hand on his shoulder. "That won't do, Fox can easily take us down even if we work together," a Qualid stated. "But you did get a few hits on him though," Robin says. "I got one hit on him too," KF declared. "He wasn't taking the fight seriously, Robin, I think he allowed me to hit him to test my skills, and as for Kid Flash, you managed to only get the drop on him when there was an opening, since he could easily read your fighting pattern, it wasn't hard for him to counter your attacks," the Atlantean informed the speedster whose shoulders slumped down. Roy came limping to the others with his quiver and bow on his back, holding his side. "Dude, you look like crap." Kid Flash stated, only to cringe from the heated glare from the auburn-haired hero. "Do you need any help?" Aqualad offered, and his answer was speedy, turning away from him. "No, I'll treat my own injuries, I don't need help from any of you." He snapped back as he limped away into the darkness. Robin frowned and was going to go help him, only for Calder to bring his arm out to stop him. "Let him go, Robin." "But. Dude, just let him go, his pride's been injured badly, we should head to the cave anyway, since we left Super Babe and Miss Martian all by themselves." Kid Flash states with a grin on his face while Robin rolls his eyes. "Seriously, KF. The last time you tried to charm Supergirl, she almost fried you," he stated. "What can I say? I like a challenge." The redhead stated while his teammates blinked in wonder. But Naruto and Hood. The two freelancers had successfully delivered the weapons to a private cargo plane owned by Lex Luthor that would be shipped to a secret base the Light owned, while they were sent back to Los Angeles via a private jet, courtesy of the man of Metropolis, who was also generous enough to supply them with 2 customized motorcycles, while the duo were garbed in their biker outfits, and Naruto had Kushinada strapped to the left side of his motorcycle as they were cruising through a dirt road in the outskirts of Law. The color scheme of Jason's bike was blood red with black outlines, while Naruto's was silver and red, with a picture of a 9-tailed fox that appeared to be leaping forward on each side of the hull. As they rode down the road, Hood glanced up at the sky to see the stars shining through the night. "I have to admit, you can see the stars better in the outskirts than the city. Wait, what is that?" One of the stars was growing bigger and seemed to be headed in their direction. "Hey boss." The biker spoke through the microphone that was built into the helmets. "Yeah? Is it just me, or is that star getting bigger?" "What star are you talking about?" He looked up and his eyes widened as he noticed a descending star split. He shouted, and the duo moved outwards as the projectile crash-landed through the woods. They spun their bikes around and skidded backwards as they hit the brake lever on their vehicles, and they came to a screeching halt. "Will you talk about a close call, was that a meteor?" Jason wondered as he lifted his visor, as did Naruto. "Don't know, but let's check it out," Naruto answered. "You want to check it out? What if it's some type of alien that eats brains and implants eggs into its victims?" Jason asked incredulously while Naruto placed the brake stand down and grabs Kushinada. "We kill it," was Naruto's answer to the vigilante, who blinked owlishly and sighs in frustration. "Better bring the big guns then," he muttered as he pulled a pair of laser guns he kept in the bike's built-in side compartments out, while his partner chuckles as they walk to the crash site. Once they made it, the first thing they see is a deep crater with what looked like a large metallic pod with smoke rising around it. "After you, boss," Jason insisted. Naruto's response was hopping and sliding down the crater while his ally joined up with him. "Stay alert, Hood, we don't know what we're dealing with," the blonde advised as they cautiously approached a metallic pod with their respective weapon ready. The hatch was suddenly blasted off by what looked like violet energy, and it hit the earthen wall. The duo paused as smoke escaped the inside of the pod, and a figure walked out with glowing violet eyes. Once the smoke cleared, it revealed whom both Naruto and Jason thought had to be the sexiest creature they ever laid eyes on, aside from Satsuki, of course. Standing before them was a female with a golden-orange skin complexion, and from her height seemed to be 5'9". She has waist-length straight jet black hair, which had a hint of purple with her hair, 2 long smooth bangs framing each side of her face. She also had 2 violet dots that represented eyebrows over her glowing violet eyes. Her outfit consisted of a black one-piece that hugged her sexy toned figure like a secondary shin, with matching elbow-length black gloves and knee-high length boots, each with violet linings. From the size of her chest, she was at least a high D cup that accumulated her nice curves, well-framed legs, and firm rear. "Whoa," was all Jason could say, looking like a deer staring into the headlights until Naruto snapped out of it and slapped the guy in the back of the helmet. "I mean, we come peace." The alien gazed at them and noticed their weapons, which caused her fists to glow violet. "Shit," was all Naruto could say as she swung her fists out and fired an energy blast that headed for them, and he tackles Jason to the ground. The exotic-skinned alien lets out a battle cry and dashes towards them like a rocket. Naruto grabs Jason and throws him to the opposite side, while drawing Kushinada at the charging alien chick, who swings out at him with her glowing fist. The area around them shook violently as her fist impacted with the flat end of Naruto's crimson blade, and said blonde skidded back a little from the physical attack, keeping her at bay. The battle of pure strength continued for a bit before they break the stalemate and leapt back. Jason groaned as he shook the cobwebs out of head and saw the blast she released earlier turned the earth into a molten substance, and shivered. "That could have been me," he said to himself before realizing. "Oh shit, boss." He saw his ally facing the enraged alien as she threw a variety of fast yet strong punches that he dodged or blocked with the flat end of his blade. He leaps back as she slammed her fist into the ground, causing the area around them to rumble. Jason was getting ready to draw his weapons, but paused when Naruto shook his head and gave him a look that said, "I got this," and he nodded. The alien girl rushes at him again, but Naruto draws Kusanada over his head and swings her down fast and hard, creating an earth-coated shockwave that cut through the ground and headed for its target. The alien flies over the attack only to let out a noofing sound as a powerful kick was delivered to her torso and sent crashing down towards the earth courtesy of Naruto. Once he landed, a barrage of violet energy bolts headed towards him, and he proceeded to dodge or deflect the small attacks that landed in different directions, causing small explosions. Smoke covered his vision as he kept a calm, keen eye out for his opponent until a bigger energy bolt headed right for him. Naruto swung his blade downwards and cut the blast in two, but he was unprepared for the jaw-shattering punch that nailed him right in the jaw before being hit by a 1-2 combo and sent flying back with a spin kick to the chest, courtesy of the orange-skinned chick. Naruto lets out a grunt as he skids back from the attacks and stops while rubbing his jaw. "Man, what is it with women possessing superhuman strength and wanting to knock my head off my shoulders? Did I piss off a female in a different life or something?" He complained before sheathing his blade and strapping it to his back in a horizontal fashion. The unknown alien sported a smile on her face as he cracked his knuckles and got into a fighting stance, bringing his hand up and doing a "come get some" gesture. Her smile grew at the challenge and rushes at him again with her right fist beat back. Naruto repeats the action and dashes towards her. When they both closed in and threw their fists, another shockwave erupted and caused them both to fly back. Naruto manages to barrel roll before planting his feet on the earth wall, with cracks forming under his feet while his foe stopped in midair. The duo got back into their respective stance with the alien girl in the air ready to attack until a yellow energy blast sailed from the sky and hit her right in the back, causing her to cry out in surprise and pain as she hit the ground. Both Naruto's and Jason's eyes widened as they saw dozens of what looked like black-colored four-armed metallic robo-squids with four glowing eyes descending towards the trio. "Hey boss. Yeah, Jason. We're gonna need some bigger guns," the Vigilante answered. So this part ends here. Alright, that's it for today's video guys. Let me know in the comments section how was the story, and also don't forget to like, share and subscribe. I will meet you in another video. Bye bye.